Good evening and welcome to tonight's full council meeting. Agenda item 1, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Exec. I don't have any announcements tonight. Steve, none. We'll move on to agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Sokol.
Councillor Harry McCarthy will be a bit late, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, please.
This is from Councillor Tanisha Bramwell.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillors Holmes, Sheard and McGrath, and Councillors Smith, Brooke and Thompson will be arriving slightly late, and apologies for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, staying seated. Councillor was saying she's running late.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Any other apologies? Councillor Munro.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to give apologies for Councillor Kath Pinnock and Councillor Andrew Marchington. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more apologies. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 15th of January 2025 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Please vote by show of hands. That is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4, declaration of interests. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? Councillor Donna Bellamy, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, interest in item 10. I'm a member of the Foster panel.
Thank you. Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Similarly, item 10, I'm the Chair of Corporate Governance and Audit.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also a member of the Adoption Panel for West Yorkshire, so it's item 10 again.
Thank you. Councillor Sewell.
Again, item 10, I'm on the Fostering Panel.
Thank you. Can I remind any members who have declared an interest to complete the form and submit it to the clerk by the end of the meeting? Thank you. Agenda item 5, petition from members of the council. Are there any petitions? Councillor Vickers.
Yes, we've got a petition organised by the Netherton Community Group urging the immediate commencement of the Netherton Greenway extension.
Thank you. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matter of the petition be referred to the appropriate Executive Director for investigation. Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Are there any more or any other petitions, from members of the Council? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is deputations and petitions. There are no deputations this evening. Are there any public petitions? No. Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is public question time. We did have one question which has had a response, but I understand that Avalon Rowling isn't here. Okay. In that case, we will move on to agenda item 8, which is the West Yorkshire Combined Authority minutes. These are to receive for information, the minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are here for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding these minutes? Okay, none. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the half-yearly monitoring report from the Treasury Management Activity 24 to 25, reference from the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. Councillor Graham Turner, you have 10 minutes to present.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't think we're not going to need 10 minutes. This is a Treasury Management report for the first half of the 24-25 financial year. This report was presented to GCAC on the 21st of January, who approved it to come to full council for noting. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that.
Seconded and reserve the right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks to the officers for bringing the monitoring report to us today. It's here to note, so very much a factual report, very much a ordinary piece of business, but I just wanted to note one or two things. It's set, of course, in the context of having a proposed budget out in the wild and having received the most recent report from the auditors, Grant Thornton. I just wanted to comment on the caveat at the bottom of table 1 at 2.3.1. The asterisk tells us that these figures show us that they're only the figures for the committed to borrowing 2-year end and not for any future borrowing. Just wanted to unpick that a little bit. I wanted to point out to the folks at home that the current net figure of 751 million borrowing, while a big number, could be considered fairly average for a council the size of Kirklees. However, when we do take into account future planned borrowing, we see that that figure is to nearly double at 1.4 billion over the next few years. In corporate governance and audit recently, the auditor's report stated that, and excuse me for reading this out, it is a quote, considering the constricted revenue budget envelope in which the council is operating, there is a risk that any construction overspends or additional interest costs from unplanned borrowing spill over and impact into the revenue position and potentially threaten the overall financial sustainability of the council. It went on to say, unfortunately, for a number of authorities, there are instances where schemes have been completed, but by which point the commercial interest has evaporated based on macroeconomic factors or change in the operator's business plan, resulting in an adverse financial impact for the local authority concerned. Now that's quite a mouthful, it's quite large, but I think that's quite serious. I think we should take it seriously. Those are strong words from an auditor. From yesterday's comments in Cabinet regarding the budget itself, we had the word potentially from that quote used as a kind of way of minimising the seriousness of that content. And we had comments that, quite rightly, we couldn't do anything about the macroeconomics outside council, and I agree, but neither can we let future borrowing leave council unduly exposed to those risks for decades to come. So is the administration going to heed that warning? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Are there any further comments? Okay. Councillor Cooper.
On page 29, there's the report on investment activity. And it says the council's invested an average balance of 51.6 million externally. Now, bearing in mind the motion that we passed in November, have we got any information at all yet about whether those investments have been invested ethically, or have any of those supported Israeli investments or things that we have concerns about in this council? Can any information be provided about that investment, please?
Okay. Any further comments? If not, I will go to Councillor Turner for his right of reply. No, Councillor Turner.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for raising that, John. You're right, that's what the auditor's report said. But we've always been fiscally responsible in this council with our capital borrowing. We've made it very clear that when we set a budget for capital borrowing, we don't extend that. And it's right that the auditors raise that because that's their job. But I believe the risk is minimal. None of this is some of the riskier capital ventures we've seen over the recent last 5, 7, 8, 10 years, which really has brought councils to the knees in many cases. This is all planned investment, all costed, all Green Book approved by the government. So yes, absolutely, it's worth noting, but we believe we're on the right path and we're fiscally responsible for the capital programme. I'll get Councillor Cooper. I'll get back to you and see what exactly it means by the investments, because it could be a number of things. It could be some of our loans, or it could be investments in funds, short-term funds, as a treasury management process.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. We will now go to the vote. I'm going to ask that we vote using our consoles. Yeah. Yeah. It's on there.
Don't need to vote on that.
Right, it's fine. Sorry, I've been advised we don't need to vote. It was for voting only. It was on here. Yeah? No, it's fine. We'll move on. Agenda item 10, page 57, report of Members' Allowance Independent Review Panel. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't need 10 minutes for this, I hope. This report before us today did come through Corporate Governance and Audit in last month. The report is the second report that's come to this council this year. You'll recall that earlier in the year we brought a report forward which indicated that the independent panel wanted to look at a limited number of roles, and this report is their feedback on those roles. And it's for this council to decide if they are satisfied with those recommendations. What they're saying is that they've recognised that a number of roles that councils undertake do require a significant amount of time to support those roles, and therefore perhaps they had been under-remunerated in the past. And I think I'll leave it at that to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you,
I move it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Is that seconded? Councillor Homewood?
Yeah, seconded and reserve the right. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Lawson?
First up again. Apologies. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to the independent review panel. They do a lot of good work. They were very busy in the period of collecting evidence, I know that, and thanks to the officers who facilitated their work. I'll keep my comments just to the recommendations. And overall, they're very, it's a positive thing. I see these recommendations as positive. I think we all agree that the allowance have been a bit of a bumpy ride over the last few years. I think the recommendations of the report indicate future stability. And I think that's good for the council, and I think that's good for the people. I think that's good for the public. Good for council, because allowances are our way of ensuring that every section of representation is as good as it can be, and that hopefully there's no financial barrier to members of parties or non-members of parties, to the public who seek election. The worst kind, that's important, because the worst kind of democracy is the one that people can only afford in terms of money or time. If you can't do either, if you're not able to do either, that's a huge barrier to democracy and the quality of democracy that we experience. It benefits in terms of transparency for residents and doing away with those cliff edge-like hikes in payments that we've seen in years gone. Those are the ones that are hard to explain and that really get up people's nose quite rightly, because they're often seen as big figures. The increasing in banding for the chair does make the eyebrows go up a little bit, but the panel's rationale is sound, I think. We see that the role is being built up. It's including some regional working, and that there is a feeling that the role has been previously undervalued in terms of the work it is undertaken. Recommendations 3 and 4, we talk about the rebanding of fostering and adoption panels. Now, having served on an adoption panel for a few years when it was still in-house, I agree that the independent panel's conclusion that the frequency of meetings and the workloads in terms of reading cases, many of them very complicated, especially in sibling situations, that this warrants the increase. So I'm all for that. While I'm on my feet, a plug for those last 2 panels. I would encourage all councillors who haven't already, especially the new ones, to think about serving on foster and adoption. And I'm sure the new councillors who are currently serving on them have found them very educational. It's one of the best things that we do as a council, and it's a real insight into the fabulous work that our children's teams do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Sokal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support the recommendation made by the independent review, because to upgrade the SRA for Chair of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee and the panel members of the Fostering and the Adoption Panel. I would like to say in the last few years, sometime as a business manager, I was struggling to find a member to put on the adoption panel or fostering panel because the work, it was too much work, full day, at least 2 days full day, but the SRI was not enough compared to the work they were doing. So I'm pleased to see this recommendation made by the reviews are fully supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Masood Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having been a panel member on 2 of these panels in the past, I welcome the recommendations by the panel. It's well overdue. It's been quite some time in the making, really, and I echo what Councillor Lawson has said, and other members as well, and the amount of papers that you do read on these panels is actually significant. I remember at one point there were about 16 reports for one child alone on a panel. So if you imagine there's 5 or 6 children, how many reports you're reading? So I envy the members that are on this panel, but I welcome the recommendations by the panel as well. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Anthony Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the benefit of the public and maybe some new members, and to remind us, could we get some clarification on how the independent panel is selected, how it's made up? And could I ask that a brief explanation of that be added to the papers in future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any further comments? No? Councillor Taylor, right for reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the comments from across the chamber on this paper. The final comment from Councillor Smith, I'm not in a position to answer that for you, but I will seek an answer from officers and we'll get that circulated. I don't think that's a difficult thing to do. So yeah, I just welcome the report and welcome people's support for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That report was also to note. We will now move on to agenda item 11, which is written questions to... Was that not to note?
That's what they've mixed up.
They've mixed it up, yes. Sorry. Okay. We will be voting on this one. Can you please use your consoles?
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it does. And I asked you, I said, is that one to note as well? And you said, yeah. No, it's fine, it's fine. Yeah, that's still waiting for a moment to come in. Is that everyone? Yeah, is that everyone that's here? Is it 54? Yeah. Yep, no, still voting. Okay, that is carried. Yeah.
Ahmed hasn't voted, he's indicated to speak.
Councillor Ahmed, sorry.
No.
Is your button not working? Okay, we'll make a note of that. And can IT just have a look at why Councillor Ahmed's button's not working? No, it's fine. Okay, I think that is carried. We will now move on. Yeah, we will now move on to agenda item 11, which is written questions to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokespersons. So a written schedule of submitted questions and responses to those questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask any supplementary questions in turn. The appropriate member will respond, and it's one supplementary question to each submitted question, please. Okay. So,
Councillor Greaves, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So, Councillor Greaves, do you have a supplementary for Councillor Turner?
Yes, thank you. So it's in respect of Section 106 education contributions. I'd just like to know what the current amount of money is that's sat with Kirklees for Section 106 education purposes, please.
Councillor Turner?
I don't know, talking about Councillor Greaves. If you recall, I've invited you to a private meeting between you and one of our senior officers next week or the week after, we can discuss that figure with you at that point when we do that meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Greaves, question 3. Do you have a supplementary for that?
Yeah. The leader of the council may think that the introduction of parking charges has been successful. I don't think that's a view shared by any of the residents who are affected by it, whether that's in Meltham or Holmfirth or Slathwaite. There are complications around how it works, but the shocking thing for me was how quickly we started issuing the penalty tickets when we were expecting to give people just a bit of a chance to get up to speed with it. So, is there anything that the leader thinks that we could have done better or still could do better to help residents get used to the introduction of these new charges?
Councillor Ahmed.
I think people are aware that for the last 14 years we have had no car parking charges in Kirklees, and we've tried to be in line with most of the other counterparts and our neighbours, and we have listened to everyone and we have tried to make sure that we can accommodate everyone. We're not going to get it completely right, but we have done our best. We've got 84 council-owned car parks across Kirklees, and 42 car parks are completely free. 16 out of those 42 of the first 2 hours that are free, and 8 car parks where we've had some issues which have been where the mobile phone needed to be registered through your app, which was Pay and Go. The officers and ourselves, we have listened, and that has now been addressed in that those particular 8 car parks where there have been issues are going to be getting parking meters installed as well. So I think the overall situation is that we've tried to keep it as affordable as possible in terms of the charges, but more importantly, we've listened and tried to make sure that it can be addressed, and it has been addressed. It's early days, and there will be issues, and we will try and make sure that we can address those as they come by.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Greaves, do you have a supplementary for question 4?
You've got to wait for me to ask it first. That's all right. So this is in respect of the recovery plan that was introduced for domestic waste collections after the Christmas period, and with the impact of the seasonal weather. So there was an awful lot of waste that was collected, but I was flagging up repeatedly households where they had been missed, and for some people it took 6 or 7 weeks to have some of the bins emptied, despite making repeated requests. Officers had visited some locations and for whatever reason had formed the view that they would not collect the bins, which I was quite surprised, because that clearly wasn't part of the recovery plan. So whilst the majority of people finally did get a collection, I would say it wasn't without problems. But is the Cabinet member aware of all of those instances where the recovery plan failed, and failed abysmally, and left people with mountains of waste where the council had committed to clearing it, but the council didn't clear it within the recovery plan? Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
I think it was a very successful recovery plan in terms of what we've done with the conditions and the snow conditions that were exceptionally bad weather, and for a continuous week, and the performance has been exceptional as well. And what I would like to indicate is that every missed bin, the data is collected and is comprehensively looked into to make sure that we actually do deliver on that. So all those missed bins, there is data that has been collected in terms of that. But in terms of finishing off, our overall performance is 99.78% in Q3 in terms of in relation to the exceptional sort of weather, bad weather, and it coincided with Christmas as well. So I think we need to congratulate and thank the officers that had done an incredible amount of work, along with all the community members and other people and the farmers and the snow wardens and the others in terms of actually pulled that together. So I would want to congratulate everyone in terms of the recovery plan.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 5?
So I appreciate that Councillor Ahmed has been unavoidably unavailable for the West Yorkshire Climate and Environment Committee meetings, but we've not been represented at those meetings, and a substitute has not been sent. And they're quite important meetings. They deal with a whole range of issues to do with flooding, to do with climate change mitigation, and millions of pounds are allocated through West Yorkshire Combined Authority to deal with those matters. Now, I've been the Council's previous representative on that committee, and I think for at least 2 years. I think I only ever gave apologies for one meeting that I was unable to attend. So I know you've only got 22 councillors out of 69 on the council, so if you're having any difficulty, I offer my services to help you, and I will attend those meetings on behalf of the council if you are unable to find anybody to do that. So if you want to take me up on that offer, more than happy to help.
Thank you for the...
Oh, sorry, I was going to answer it. Yeah, sorry. No, we didn't know whether or not I should answer this or Councillor Ahmed should answer it, but I think Councillor Cooper, thank you for your question. I do recognise that, yes, you were the previous representative there, and I'm sure you did do a good job for us. Yes, unfortunately, Councillor Ahmed hasn't been able to attend. We are in the process of, there are 4 committees we do need to appoint subs. I do have to say, though, that doesn't mean that the council hasn't been unrepresented, nor that we haven't been keeping on top of all the issues. Many of them, of course, do actually come to the Combined Authority meeting itself, and I personally have been there. There are lots of other meetings which we have been represented on, I must just remind you, we are 23 members, not 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 6? Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 6?
I do. And I sort of look at this, and obviously we're £2.2 million short on the money that government is providing to cover their increase in employers' national insurance contributions. And of course, that's money that we've got to find elsewhere, money we've got to find from council taxpayers. Would it have not made more sense to fund public services through a progressive taxation system where we tax the wealthy more, where they pay their fair share, than putting a tax on employment?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Next time I see Rachel, I'll have a chat with her and see whether that's the route she wants to go down. I'm not a party to her thoughts at the moment. Bearing in mind that we only won the election in middle of last year, a progressive tax that would work would take a long time to devise and develop. And we all know, as I pointed out yesterday to you, that the Institute of Fiscal Studies made it very clear that there needed to be tax rises or further cuts in public spending. So this is one way of doing it. She has honoured her promise not to increase taxes on working people. That was a promise we made in the election, and that's what she's done. So she found a different way of raising the money that the country desperately needs. But a progressive tax, as I said, would take a long time, longer than any 6 months, because as soon as you published a white paper on it, the very expensive, very clever accountants, tax advisors will go through it, through line by line, and find a way to dodge it. So it's very complicated to produce that document. You can't do it in 6 months. Let's wait and see what Rachel does in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 7?
Yeah, 14 years to prepare, but not enough time. Okay, next question regarding, obviously yesterday we had the news that the Cabinet is steamrollering ahead with their plans to privatise Castle Grange and Claremont House dementia care homes. And I guess the question is what represents success and what represents failure? I mean, these assets that we're passing on could, in a few years' time, when our arrangement with those providers falls out of favour, if they're not making a profit, if for their shareholders they're not doing what's required, they could well become a Tesco's local, a student accommodation. Will that be the time when we failed? Or will it be the failure if the care standards of care that the residents who live in those homes falls below what they're currently achieving? What is success here? What is failure?
Councillor Addy.
I'm afraid I think you cut off on the very last bit of that, Councillor Cooper, but I think the general gist is, what is success? Well, in adult social care, we care for people and we have to look at the care for everybody. These homes are going to be moved into the private sector, which will cement a position across the landscape of social care. And again, I've stressed that we are looking at quality providers to provide the care in these homes, alongside all the other private providers, alongside the care that we support for thousands of people who need social care. And, you know, it's a very massive job that. So I think the council every day has success because it cares for the people of our borough.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Safdar, do you have a supplementary for question 8?
So obviously I understand that the council are working incredibly hard to clear up fly tip sites, but Councillor Lawson, Councillor Vickers and myself have made multiple requests on behalf of places of worship, community leaders and parents demanding CCTV at key hotspots. I know there's a lot of pressure, financial pressure on the council right now, but will the leader of the council and the relevant cabinet members listen to our residents and come to Thornton Lodge and the Walpole estate with myself and the two councillors to see the horrible situation taking place with fly tipping every other day. Myself, Councillor Vickers, Councillor Lawson, we drive past one hotspot, another hotspot, it's clear. Then 2 days later, more fly tipping. So I think we need a dual strategy of not only cracking down on unlicensed so-called minor van waste carriers, but also taking seriously the repeated demands by residents of CCTV cameras at certain fly tipping hotspots, because this is a cost this council can no longer afford.
Thank you, Councillor Safdar. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Safdar. In terms of fly tipping, it's one of the things that is the most common everywhere. And in terms of CCTV cameras, it is a part of the overall strategy to crack down on fly tipping, and this is actually something that's looked at in terms of hotspots as well. One of the things I'd like to just say is that it's incumbent upon us also that where there is fly tipping, let's report it and let's do something about it. But please, let's not publicise it. Because the more we publicise fly tipping, it encourages fly tipping to actually take place as well. So other people will know there's fly tipping taking place in a particular area. Let's go and dump it. Wow, I didn't know where to dump it, and I'll go and dump it there as well. So let's keep reporting it and let's make sure we do it. In terms of where are we with our performance, we are actually quite good. We're ranked 71st out of 309. For the action taken, and 102nd in terms of the penalty notices that we serve. We do seize vehicles, we do prosecute, and we do provide fixed penalties as well. So there is a lot of enforcement that takes place to try and deter it, and we will continue to do that. But we are we're a good organisation. We're one of the top 3rd ranking performance local authorities in terms of fly tipping.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Safdar, do you have a supplementary for question 9?
So as you've seen, the question I've posed is a very important one, and I would say thousands of residents in every ward have expressed a lot of dismay and disappointment on this particular subject. So my supplementary question is, as we know, Kirklees Council uses Barclays Bank as their primary banking provider. According to many reputable human rights organisations, including the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Barclays have been and continue to be directly complicit in the ethnic cleansing against Palestinians. Now, the research, which I can share with members through a link I have here, the research by the PSC has uncovered that Barclays now holds over £2 billion in shares and provides £6.1 billion in loans to 9 companies whose weapons, components and military technology have been used by the occupying power in its attacks against innocent Palestinians. According to information released through Freedom of Information requests, the initial term of the Barclays contract ends in June 2027. And the Council will begin developing a procurement strategy to renew that contract 18 months prior to its final expiry date. Can the Cabinet Member confirm that the Council is or is not looking to renew that contract with Barclays, and what, if any, ethical and environmental parameters or consideration the Council looks at before choosing which bank to go with?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you for the question. As you rightly pointed out, we are under contract till 2027 with Barclays, and we will start renegotiating that contract or looking for alternative suppliers in about 18 months' time. I think there's a bit of a lesson here is several years ago, the bank we were then with withdrew from local authority banking, and we had to search for an alternative banker because obviously we need a bank. And despite going out for tender at that point in time, Barclays was the only only bank that we could bank with. Nobody else was interested. And I have to say, at the time, the conversation I had with the Section 151 officer, this is really not what I want to do. But because I don't like Barclays, I still remember from my days of fighting apartheid, their involvement in South Africa, I really would have chosen anybody except Barclays to bank with. But we have a legal obligation to have a contract, so we went with Barclays. Much as I say, not that I wanted to really go with them, but they were the only option. So we will go through a procurement process. And I've also done some research, and to be honest with you, I've really struggled to find any bank that doesn't invest in arms, oil, or anything that might be connected with several, what you might call iffy regimes across the world. So they're not the only one that does that. So we'll go through the procurement process, and we'll see where it turns up.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary for question 10?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Ahmed for your response. And I heard your reply to Councillor Greaves earlier. Sadly, I think you're being very complacent. The statistics you quote at quarter 3, I want to talk about today. So as of today, I have residents in one of my villages in High Burton who haven't had their green bins collected since before Christmas. That's despite my efforts. In my own village of Shepley, they were only collected on Monday, again, since before Christmas. I've had, for a fortnight, been engaging with officers, had all sorts of promises. They're out today, they're collecting them today, it'll be done today. I have no doubt that the senior team are trying to address it, but something is very badly going wrong. And to sit there and go, we're collecting X percentage, that's great for them. You should be focusing on the ones that aren't collected. You told us that there were all these statistics about which bins had been missed and which bins, we've got comprehensive information on it. Every time I've asked for that information, they've not been able to provide it with me. So when I've asked, I'm getting residents contacting me on various streets saying the green bins still haven't been collected. Why can't you tell me which streets haven't been collected straight away if you've got all this comprehensive information? So all my ask is that you're not complacent and that you think about the people, the small percentage that haven't been collected. Because to be honest, if our bins are collected every week, we're never going to talk about it. If your bins are missed, not only are you going to be aggrieved against the council, you're going to tell everyone you meet about it. And so it's that small percentage that is damaging the reputation of the council. And I'm sorry, your responses so far haven't given me any confidence that you're all over this and you understand the challenges. Because as I say, I've still got bins I haven't been collecting since before Christmas. Now, if that was you, and these are families, I'm sure you would be very concerned about the fact that you're trying to store all of this recycling somewhere. When the hell are they ever going to get it collected? So I don't necessarily need a lengthy response. My request is, don't be complacent and focus on those that are missed, because that's the problem we've got. And what are the reasons behind those being missed? That's what you need to be doing as a cabinet member. I'm sorry for telling you what to do, but I think you understand. Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
Councillor Taylor, we are listening and we'll continue to listen, and I am listening. So what I would say to you is please forward those details to me personally, and I will look into those, because if you're saying that bins have not been collected since Christmas, then that does need to be looked into, and we need to do that. So I'm not complacent as such. I was trying to give an overall picture in terms of where we are, and you have correctly pointed out it's a small percentage, but we need to try and get to the bottom of that in terms of why those have been missed. And if that's not been reported or they're not being picked up in the data, that's for me to look at as well. So please forward the details to me, and I will personally look into that as well with the officers and get back to you with that. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Lawson, do you have a supplementary for question 11?
Thank you, Mayor. So thanks for the answer to the question proposed, which was why aren't we going to have a council in April? In fact, we haven't had a council in April for some years now. The answer, I believe, is that it was decided. Well, I think we can undecide it between us, and I think I need to point out again that going from February to August with only one council is unacceptable. One ordinary council, I beg your pardon, is unacceptable. One chance for the public to come and deputise or ask questions is not how we want to do democracy in Kirklees. There's no good reason for the shutdown. It could be managed in an election year, pre-election period, and it can certainly be managed in a fallow year. So what I think my ask of you today is, will you undertake to support the move to a April council this year and in subsequent years, either in beginning of April, late March? Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Pattison.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Well, as you know, no, there are not normally meetings in April because of PERDA, and that is the pre-election period, which really precludes much business being undertaken during that time, and certainly we can't be using the council meetings to be as electioneering. I think you'll find that in most, if not all, certainly in West Yorkshire councils, that is the common theme, and that always has been. But having said that, there are no elections this year, and as I think you're probably aware, the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee will be receiving a report which suggests that there should be one this year, an additional meeting this year, and on the assumption that that is passed there, it'll come to the next available council meeting, which will be on the 5th of March, and it'll be for the whole council to agree whether or not we have a meeting in April. Future meetings and the number of meetings there are, and the spread of those meetings is again something that Corporate Governance and Audit will recommend to us later on. I would just like to point out, though, we do already have, I think, 2 more meetings than any other West Yorkshire Authority across in West Yorkshire, and there is a cost to this of £1,300, £1,500 each meeting. So there are some reasons why we should not add to additional meetings, but that will be for full council to decide at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Judge. Just a point of clarification as Chairman of Corporate Governance and Audit. So at the last meeting of Corporate Governance and Audit, we had a report about council dates, and I'm sure you're aware, Councillor Lawson, that we rejected the report and we asked that they look again, and they looked at bringing forward a meeting for April this year, There is a report coming to my Corporate Governance and Audit Committee meeting a week on Friday, which, if that is agreed by Corporate Governance and Audit, it will then go to the budget meeting in March for approval, which enable a meeting to be held in April. Similarly, we didn't accept the initial draft of dates for the year 25-26, and we've asked officers to go away and look at those again for the very points that you raised. So we picked that up in the meeting, which I'm sure you're aware of, because Councillor Pinnock was, so very supportive of that. And again, we're looking forward to a report coming back to our meeting in March, I think it is, with a view that we'll take a report to the annual general meeting in May, which will indicate the dates that we're looking for the subsequent year. So I think your point's well made, but it's already in train, is my clarification.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ball? Sorry.
Respond to this, because that is not the answer I was given. The answer I was given that the dates had been decided. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Bolt?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, in rising, could I thank you for attending the memorial service on Hartshead Moor to commemorate the victims of the M62 coach bombing. Not only was it well received by the families, but by the many people of North Kirklees who were aware of that. But to return to Councillor Lawson's question, I'm sure he's aware of Standing Order 22D, which says any 5 members of the council, if they've signed a requisition presented to the mayor and he or she has refused to call a meeting or has failed to call a meeting within 7 days. So extraordinary meetings are available, John, should you wish to have them.
Thank you for that point of clarification, Councillor Bolt. Thank you. Sorry, point of order, Councillor Hall. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that we suspend Standing Order 12.7 so that we can hear the rest of the written questions and be responded to, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Is that seconded? Councillor Taylor and Councillor Firth have seconded that. We'll just take this to the vote. Can we vote using our consoles to extend the time for agenda item 11 so we can take all the questions? That is carried, so we will now continue. Councillor Darwan, do you have a supplementary for question 12?
While it is noted that the West Yorkshire Pension Fund is not directly controlled by Kirklees Council and the fiduciary duty is paramount in investment decisions, transparency remains essential in ensuring that public funds are not complicit in human rights violation. Upon reviewing West Yorkshire's pension fund disclosed investments, I have found that the fund has invested in 1,675 companies. Among them are Barclays, BAE Systems, Tesla, BlackRock, Euro Middle Market Private Debt, and others. BAE Systems, for instance, is known to supply arms and military equipment, raising serious concerns about potential links to conflict zones, including Israel's military operations. Barclays has also been flagged for financial ties to arms manufacturing, supplying Israel. Given these findings, it is imperative that greater scrutiny is applied to ensure that West Yorkshire Pension Fund investments aligned with ethical standards and human rights obligations. The Supreme Court ruling does not absolve public bodies from their broader responsibilities in relation to international law and genocide prevention. Will the Council and its representatives on the West Yorkshire Investment Advisory Panel engage proactively with the fund's managers to ensure an ethical investment strategy that does not contribute directly or indirectly to the ongoing suffering of the Palestinian people, especially since the deferred wages of local government workers must not be used to fund injustice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dow. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Darwin, for the question. I'd like to state at this moment in time I have no connections with the West Yorkshire Pension Fund. I've never been a trustee of it. I'm not even a member of it because the right to have joined that was taken away by a previous Conservative minister. So I can't speak on behalf of the West Yorkshire Pension Fund. That's for our representatives to lobby them and discuss that when they're there. It's very interesting, isn't it, when you look at the list of companies they do invest in. It's very difficult to see how some companies that do provide weapons also provide civilian products as well. So how we divest from that, that's really challenging. BAE Systems absolutely do make weapons, but they also make significant parts for civilian aircraft. And I think we all like to think we can go on as holidays every now and again. So it's complicated. It's not just as simple as we're pulling the plug on this organisation, because also at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, and I think most of us don't like it, this country has to have its own supply of weapons to defend ourselves should any idiot despot decide to come and take over our country. So we also have to have that deterrent there, sadly. And I mean sadly that we do have to have a deterrent, but we have to have a deterrent. And if that's BAE Systems or any of the other arms manufacturers, then I'm afraid it has to be so be it.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary for question 13?
Yes, please. Can I thank Councillor Ahmed for his response to the question? And I wonder whether he'd give us the benefit of his thoughts on two further things. The first is that although lots of our bin crew did sterling work trying to catch up after Christmas, the job was made twice as bad because, of course, we didn't have any bin collections during Christmas week, like almost every other council in the country does. So that would have been an easier job for them had that been in place. And the second thing I'd like his reaction to was a comment that was made to me by a resident who, quite rightly, we'd been asked to put extra bags out, and if we put an extra bag out, it would be taken by the bin. And I think that was a good decision to make. However, this report was that when the bin was emptied, the black bag was then picked up and put in the empty bin, and the bin lorry went on its way. So I wonder whether we could have some comments about that, please.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'm going to repeat what I've said to Councillor Taylor as well, in terms of if you've got any specific incidences or examples, and clearly, you know, if the two bags were there to be removed, not to be put back into the grey bin. So if that is the case, please let us know, and we'll take that as well. And in terms of no collections during Christmas, that is something that we've had extensive discussions over this, and we were prepared, we have been prepared, and we continue to be prepared to deal with that, and we have done. And our overall performance indicates that we do actually try and do that. And it hasn't created any problems. The reason that we have had difficulties is because of the bad snow weather condition, which happened to have coincided with that, and that obviously exacerbated the situation.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Lawson, do you have a supplementary for question 14?
Can I actually thank, I believe it was Councillor Pinnock who gave me a very comprehensive answer to my question, which was, what do Kirklees do for victims of crime? There's a slight problem here because I can't help but wonder why zero support was offered to the resident in my ward who was the victim of arson. Crime he reported to West Yorkshire Police and then to Kirklees. Maybe having your bins set on fire isn't deemed a crime by Kirklees Council, and therefore it's a case of the victim paying for the replacements. That's currently £74 for a set of new bins. Many of us in this chamber would have just probably gone ouch and paid it. But imagine if you are surviving on a basic state pension. You've also got multiple ill health problems? That is a question. That £74 is whether you keep your house warm, you actually keep food on the table. My resident is now reduced to walking down the street to the nearest K&H block of flats and putting his rubbish in there. He is an ill man. If he'd have left his rubbish by the charred remains of his bin, he'd have probably ended up being done for fly tipping when they eventually collected it. So basically, and I have raised this with many, many people, one of them actually informed me that the £74 wasn't for replacement bins, it was for delivery. So I actually asked if I could come up and pick up a bin for him, but I was told health and safety. So basically, my question is, why are the victims of arson told they have to pay for replacement bins, and that's the rules? Why aren't cases looked into on an individual basis, and can my resident please have a bin?
Councillor Pinnock.
Councillor Lawson. Actually, first looking at the question, I did think to myself, it is a good question. It's something that everyone in this chamber should know an answer to. Where do victims of crime go to get help and support? What is available within the council? And as councillors, we're at the heart of wards and in the heart of the community. We should be able to know where to send residents who are victims or having difficulties. So it is a good question. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a question for me or whether it's a question for Councillor Ahmed next to me, but I'm more than happy to address the situation as to what support there is available generally in Kirklees, if you'd like me to do that. Because I wasn't quite sure from the question what specifically you wanted me to deal with. Would you like me to do that? Yeah? Okay. All right. So just to be very clear, through the Communities Board that we have in Kirklees, the council meet regularly with the police, the fire service, community groups and other stakeholders to identify key areas of tackling abuse, antisocial behaviour, violence and exploitation. So we do meet regularly to find out what are the specific issues affecting Kirklees, and based on that, what strategies do we need to put together to make sure that we're addressing these things, to make sure that services are available for people who are affected, who are victims of crime. And just to name a few things, and I think it's important to mention it here because everyone's in the room. I'm sure a number of us have come across situations where residents have approached us like yourself, wanting help and wanting support. So we have multi-agency risk assessment conferences, the MARAC. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. And they're an agency that meet regularly to discuss reduction of the risk of harm and the risk to children and vulnerable adults. And the purpose of that is obviously to signpost, to make sure that victims get the support that they need and that the right agencies are in place to do that. So in December, the council launched the Kirklees Domestic Abuse Specialist Service, and that's partnering with other domestic violence organisations. And the purpose of that really is to make sure that victims of crime, of antisocial behaviour, don't have to go from place to place telling their story more than once, and making sure it's a one-stop shop where people are able to get the help and support that they need. So that's really important. And it's not just there to support victims, but also family members and friends, so they have an understanding of what's going on. There are other things, obviously, that's available, if you'd like me to address those. So we've got the street marshals. They patrol the town centre, regularly helping people moving from place to place to ensure that crime is reduced. The night bus, which was introduced in 2022, which was launched by the council in partnership with Locala, Safer Kirklees and West Yorkshire, set up to help women, but not just women, but victims of crime, to ensure that crime is reported and that it goes to where it needs to go to. Ask Angela's another one. I'm not sure if everyone in the chamber is aware of that. Ask Angela, it's a national safety scheme launched in Kirklees in 2021, and it involves over 100 venues in Kirklees, and that's restaurants, local libraries, pubs, clubs, lots of different organisations where people can go to where they feel in fear for their safety so they can get the support and the help that they need. As well as that, there are third sector organisations which the Council commission and provide funding for to ensure that victims of crime get the support that they need. I think specifically relating to your inquiry, that particular person, really, what I'd say is that you need to approach me directly, but I do think it's mainly my colleague, Councillor Ahmed, in relation to the bin and getting the bin replaced. I think it's a very sad situation. No one should have to experience that. It's a terrible thing. And more certainly needs to be done to protect people who go through those sorts of difficulties. So I'm more than happy to take that up. I don't know if there's any more detail around who the perpetrator might be, because yes, we want to replace the bin, but also we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So whoever's responsible for that, we need to make those reports to the police and ensure that something is done about it.
Thank you for your response, Councillor Pinnock. Going to move on now to Councillor Taylor. Do you have a supplementary for question 15?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pinnock, thank you for your detailed response. I asked the question as I've got concerns regarding the impact on our schools' performance as a result of the government's planned education bill. This bill has rightly faced significant criticism for its impact on parental choice, academy freedoms and support for specialist education programmes. I share these concerns and hope you do as well. Firstly, the proposed changes significantly reduce parental choice in education. Parents should have a strong say in their children's schooling, yet this bill seeks to centralise decision-making, reducing outstanding schools' ability to grow and limiting options for families. This move undermines the principle that parents are best placed to determine the right educational environment for their children by limiting their options. Secondly, the bill places unnecessary restriction on the academies, which have historically played a crucial role in driving educational improvements. By curbing their freedoms, the government risks stifling innovation and flexibility, both of which have been instrumental in improving school performance and student outcomes. Schools should be empowered to make decisions based on the needs of their communities, rather than subjected to rigid bureaucratic oversight. Finally, the government has cut support for crucial specialist programmes, including computer IT skills and higher maths, at a time when these subjects are more vital than ever. Reducing support for these areas will have a long-term detrimental effect on students' future career prospects and the UK's ability to compete in a global, technology-driven economy. Instead of cutting back on these essential programmes, we should be increasing investment in STEM education to better equip our young people for the future. Kirklees should stand with those who are opposing this bill and advocate for an education system that supports choice, innovation and high-quality learning opportunities. I urge the Council to take that firm stance against these damaging proposals and to push for a system that truly prioritises students' needs and their futures. I hope this response makes clear my opposition to the bill and my commitment to ensuring that our education service serves the best interests of all students in Kirklees, and hope that you will join me in suggesting that the government needs to think again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you for your supplementary. What I do want to say is that, myself and senior officers within the council meet regularly with schools and academies. We are aware of the changes that are coming in, and those discussions are actually taking place as to how it's going to impact mainstream schools and academies. So I've taken on board what you said. That will be something I'll be raising with them to find out how is it likely to impact on them, because they're the ones who know from day to day what the impact is going to be. So I'll certainly raise that with them and get a better understanding of how those issues are likely to impact them, or if there are other things that may be able to mitigate some of the issues that you've mentioned today.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary for question 16?
Yes. You found it. forgotten they were straight after each other. I do apologise. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ahmed, for your response. Since I put this request in, which is, for those members who haven't seen it, which is talking about the number of accidents we're having in an accident hotspot in my ward between the Sovereign Junction and Car Lane, Cross Lane, which is just below the Sovereign Junction. When I wrote this, we'd had 3 crashes very recently. We had a further one on Friday. We have looked at everything. I raised it through scrutiny, and officers said they didn't think there was anything more that they could do at these junctions. So I'm now saying, could we look at a speed camera? Potentially that may help. Also, the Car Lane and Cross Lane junctions are giveways, and I'm told they can't be stop signs, but I think we ought to challenge that. The argument is that there's adequate visibility displays either side of the road, which means it doesn't qualify to be a stop sign. But if there was adequate visibility and people were recognising that, we wouldn't have the number of crashes that we're having. So I'm just asking you, Councillor Ahmed, if you'll work with me to perhaps push back a little bit on officers who seem to sometimes hide behind the technical guidance rather than recognising we've got a problem here, everything we tried isn't fixing it, and we need to find something that can help reduce the number of crashes and incidents that are occurring as part of Kirklees' move towards zero deaths. So if you would be willing to work with me, I'd appreciate that.
Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, I'm concerned that obviously there's that many accidents. One of the difficulties that the highways team have is that if there are accidents and there are incidents, there is a police investigation. And the police investigation must be carried out because there are a number of reasons and multiple reasons why those accidents have happened and what they can do to prevent it, but also their suggestions, because their suggestions then incorporate the complete interventions that the highways will be dealing with. So that sometimes is frustrating because you're thinking nothing has been done when they're actually waiting for that. And if you look at your response, it says once that information is received from West Yorkshire Police, the council officers will review the locations at section A6 of the A629 and the safety cameras against the safety cameras. So they're not saying they're not going to be doing it. They will be looking into that and they will do that. And one of the other very, very harsh statistics which we also need to understand is that more than 90% of the accidents are due to driver error. Speeding, drinking, talking to other people, doing whatever it may be. Majority of the accidents are actually driver error. And there's a small percentage which are due to actually safety measures or engineering interventions which are needed. But I take on board your issues and I will take this with the officers and make sure that there is a response that is provided to you once the police investigation has been undertaken and there is a way forward in terms of that. But if you look at the response, it's a positive response to say that they will be looking towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Holt, do you have a supplementary for question 17?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say, if we were going to bring a new policy into the council for our residents, would we offer them one method to actually use? Would we say to them there is only one way in which you can actually use our service? If we did, I think we'd be held up by every discrimination board there was going. And yet where the parking is concerned, we are offering one option to our residents of using a mobile phone. Notwithstanding, we're assuming that every one of those members using the car parks that have been allocated has access to a mobile phone. Not only that, that they have access to a mobile phone that is able to use apps. On top of that, we are using an app which also has to be adapted so it doesn't charge the user 40p every time they use that app, and it is not free. So we tell them they have 2 hours free parking, they have to use one method to actually use that, a mobile phone, and you're assuming that they can do it. Yes, they can go and press a green button if there is a machine, if it's working. And if they don't want to do that and want to pay with, cash, sorry, we can't offer you that either. You have a card or nothing else. Where is the choice? And I think the discrimination against those who just want to pay, or they want to be able to have their free entitlement of the 2 hours without having to give all their personal details into an app, which a lot of people reluctantly don't want to because they're told not to. And also, if they go on to ring up, they have to give their bank details over a mobile phone system. And I know for a fact quite of my residents, both in adjacent wards, do not want to give their personal banking details on a phone. So why is it we can't use the old school that many, many towns across our country is, I'm going very technical now, a cardboard clock? Why can we not just issue a clock which has the time on, which residents can put in their window of their car to say when they've arrived, and they can have their 2 hours without having to get technical, without having to walk to a meter and just turn the time? What's wrong with that? Why is it when I've raised that both with the cabinet member and with the leader of the council, I got no reply and no suggestion that that was a good idea? We could even charge for the clocks, and I spoke to residents and they'd be happy to pay for one. They just do not want to be pushed into a corner where they have no choice than what has been suggested. So what I'd like to ask is, can we not be simple about this and give them a cardboard clock? Is that beyond Kirklees to be able to print some clocks to give to our residents?
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Ahmed.
Councillor Holt, for your emotional message. We have taken on board the concerns of a lot of the residents in terms of the car parking charges, and as I mentioned, there were 8 which are the ones that the Ringo app applies to, and you're referring to that. And in your original question, you referred to St John's as car park in Clackheaton. There are 2 car parks. There is one in front and one behind, and the one in front does have 2 pay and display meters which can be used, and that applies to the one at the back as well. So there was no issues. So if they wanted to use that, that could and still does apply. But the positive message is that for us, because we have officers and ourselves and the cabinet have listened, and we're making sure that the 8 which are on the Ringo app application in terms of payments will have payment meters in the same way as everybody else. So that is in operation, and they'll be around within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So apologies for the fact that we cannot always do everything for everyone, but I think we are trying to make sure that there's a consistent approach in these parking meters. And this particular one that you're talking about will have the payment tickets, which will be consistent with all the other car parks.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary for question 18?
Thank you. Can I first of all thank you to Councillor Hawkins for his reply. We have had a short email exchange since I sent the question in, but I think for transparency purposes, what I wanted to do was to bring this issue to the attention of all the members so we know exactly what's happening here. And this came to me because a resident got in contact, and she'd been through the process of ringing up the disabled badge office. She had to wait, unfortunately, an hour to talk to anybody. And there was then told that they were currently processing applications from before August the 7th, which is a long time ago and a huge rate. Now, that's why I asked what the current status was for the wait for blue badges. The resident also asked something else, so I'm going to put two supplementaries really in one to Councillor Hawkins. One was, can we please investigate some method of residents being able to check online what the status is of their application? Because just to be told, well, it might take 26 weeks, and you just sat there waiting is not really satisfactory. And of course, I imagine the office of the Blue Badge are forever fielding calls from people ringing up to say, what's happening, we haven't heard from you. So that might be actually an investor-save process there. And the second thing is, I think we ought to just consider whether 26 weeks for a renewal, for a new application is actually a suitable time frame. Given that, by definition, the people that are applying for the Blue Badges are vulnerable people, to be waiting 26 weeks, 6 months, half a year in old money is an awful long time for these people to be waiting. Can we do something to look at the process and try and speed it up if possible? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very greedy there, Councillor Hall, getting 2 supplementaries in, but for completeness, I'll relay along as well what we've been discussing over email. So I've flagged this particular resident's experience with the service. We do actually keep call records for duration, and for the Blue Badge team, the average is about 12 minutes, so it's quite a deviation is that they've experienced. But I'm looking into that and seeing why that might have happened. More broadly speaking, of course, the Council always aims to respond to our residents as expeditiously as possible. We did receive last year 10,300 applications for Blue Badges, included in those as well, those discretionary badge applications, which outlined in my response are much more complex than just sort of your standard renewals. Sometimes there needs to be an assessment from an occupational therapist involved, so they're not as straightforward as some of the other applications that we do receive. But the team is working hard to respond to those as quickly as they can. There are 3 new members of staff as well in that team, so hopefully that will speed up the process as well. I think the suggestion of an online checker is a very good one. I've taken that away with officers to see if we can explore this in the case for future applications. Currently, residents can contact the council by phone and email, but hopefully they'll have an experience a little closer to the 12 minutes than they will an hour. I think the quickest we've recorded actually is 4 minutes as well, so hopefully it's a bit closer to that. In terms of how we can make it even quicker for those compared to the 26 weeks, obviously, as with most services, more resource would help in that. But we're also exploring new technology as well, how AI developments could be incorporated into the application process to speed it along too. We're not alone in the struggle. The application process is quite long across the country, really. But I do feel we are processing residents' applications in Kirklees as quickly as we can, but we're always striving to do better, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawking. Councillor Safdar, do you have a supplementary for question 19?
Yes, I do, yes. So thank you for your long and detailed response, Councillor Turner. I'm encouraged that some career services, especially the Youth Justice Service, are continuing, and I wish them well in their important work. You've mentioned in your response that the cuts come on top of 2 reductions from both Kirklees and Calderdale Council in the past 2 financial years. How does the councillor believe that these cuts, these further cuts, will impact the morale at the incredibly hard-working staff at the C&K Career Service?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your supplementary question. I would just like to say that C&K Careers deliver a fantastic service for residents of Kirklees and Calderdale. They are a fantastic organisation. I actually know the Martin who runs that really well. He's an ex-council employee, and I had a conversation with him before we produced the last budget. So we've had private conversations about this. Martin fully understands our position. Like many parts of the council, we're still looking to create savings. So unfortunately, C&K have had to take their share of those savings going forward for next month's budget. Just to add to that, we take our role of both career service and skills training in this local authority extremely seriously. You've just got a list of a couple there. That also need to add that we work through WICA on their training programme, and Kirklees outperforms at level 2 and level 3 every other local authority in West Yorkshire. So we're doing something right. We've got fantastic support from not only C&K Careers, our own officers based in working with the council and the skills and training service, who deliver a fantastic package that is really delivering positive outcomes for our young people and adult learners. I was recently in Dewsbury to look at the skills village we set up in Dewsbury in conjunction with the Kirklees College. A fantastic opportunity to bring training to young people in a field there. We know we've got massive shortages, not only here in Kirklees, across the country, and we're giving those young people the opportunity to learn a skill that will hopefully create a job for life. So we take our training, education system extremely seriously, and we don't just invest in C&K, we invest across the board, and as I said, we achieve really positive outcomes compared to the rest of West Yorkshire.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary for question 20?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question 20. I acknowledge your response, but it is contrary to what I understand. I understand there is a plan to refurbish the building. Can you please explain that? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
In all the conversations I've had recently about Tolson, we have not decided to refurbish it. We have yet to decide on its future. At this moment in time, it continues to be the museum for Huddersfield, and any decision on its future will only be made as we open our new museum and art gallery in future years.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Munro again, do you have a supplementary for question 21?
Yes, thank you. I acknowledge your response, but can you please tell me why this is?
Councillor Turner.
Because we're working on it at this moment in time, so we don't know the valuation until we finish that process.
Thank you. Councillor Munro again, do you have a supplementary for question 22?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Please can you make sure that any review will ensure that the policy is fit for purpose? Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Daji, do you have a supplementary for question 23?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Councillor Ahmed, for your written reply. But your reply does not cover adequately the points raised and the concerns that residents in Batley East have. You've just skimmed over with your answer, which is what they tell me has been happening to them for years now. And you've given a similar answer to what they get from officers. I was hoping for a lot more from you as the lead member, because in Batley East, the residents have so many concerns that on a daily basis I get phone calls. I go out, take videos, take photos, submit those to the council. So far I haven't included you in those emails because I know you're very busy, but in the future I may have to, because residents are very angry that the state of Batley East is absolutely terrible. And what they think is that the Kirklees Council just simply don't care about Batley. They care about other areas, but not Batley. So, and then you talk about innovative solutions in your reply. Can you share briefly with us what that might be, so that it might give us some hope and encouragement? I'd also like a reply from you in terms of action plan as to deal with these concerns in my area.
Thank you, Councillor Daji. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Daji, for a very extensive question, and I hope we did try and look at it extensively as well, and officers did look at most of the issues and the concerns that you've had. Just very briefly, there's around about 111 inquiries that you've raised through the system, which means that you've been quite active, and 107 of those have been closed. That doesn't mean they've been resolved, but they've been closed, and there's about four outstanding as far as council inquiries is concerned. One of the beauties of council inquiries is if all the councillors do it through there, we have a system of recording it as well. And what I would say is that I share your sentiments in terms of the kind of concerns that you got, which a lot of the other wards have got as well. You're not the only one, and Batley is not being scared. We don't care, or it's particularly a specific ward which has been ignored. It's not the case. And what I would suggest to you is please send me specific incidences and issues which you've got, and I will then deal with those with you directly.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Darji, do you have a supplement? No, you don't. You don't get a right to reply on a supplementary, I'm afraid. Do you have a supplementary for question 24?
Question 24. Councillor Hawkins, thanks for your reply on this one. This was in response to a number of inquiries I have received from residents in Batley and Dewsbury who feel they've been deprived when the customer service, so-called, was closed down in Dewsbury. After the reply, I actually went to Dewsbury Library to find out for myself the situation there. And what I found was that there is the library there, and but the customer service section was not there. When I asked a member of the library staff, I was told that the customer service actually closed down there last October. So what they're saying is, since October, there's been no service provision in Dewsbury, and I would guess same in Huddersfield as well. This is really no way for us to treat residents in our area that actually need help from us, also including people who don't speak language and need bilingual support. So basically, even though Councillor Hawkins says that there is some provision, in reality there's nothing. And I think they were depriving residents of that. So I don't agree with the response from Councillor Hawkins. There is no service provision. The library staff are not aware that they are responsible for doing two jobs and doing the customer service as well, which is not reasonable for us to ask to do that. So basically, there are no staff from customer services based in Dewsbury Library at the moment.
Councillor Hawkins.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Darji, for speaking to me yesterday as well regarding this matter. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and the experiences of other residents as well who went to Dewsbury Library. Your experience is different from those we have received feedback from, and my own experience as well. But nonetheless, I'll ensure that is fed back to the service and that our staff are making it as clear as possible to all of our residents that the support from the council is there and available to them when they enter Dewsbury Library. My colleague Councillor Pinnock will delve a little more into this later on in the meeting, but I think we all appreciate that libraries are more than just a place for books now. They house so much support which many of our residents depend upon, and it's our duty to make sure that support is accessible to all. Whilst the service change occurred prior to my appointment to the Cabinet, I've been very clear throughout that it's not job done and that the service continues, and that the service must continue to improve on how to guide residents to the relevant council services when they come to Dewsbury Library, and all of our libraries, should I say. To that end, we will continue to ask those customers accessing our libraries about their experiences, and I've also asked officers to produce a lessons learnt report which will be taken to the relevant scrutiny panel later this year.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Darji, do you have a supplementary for question 25? Yes,
I have. As an ex-social worker in Kirklees and senior managing children's services for many years, plus other authorities, I have a great deal of interest in children's services, and I'm very pleased to receive the response from Councillor Kendrick to say that there are no agency workers. Very pleased with that, because I know that there are a lot of pressures on social workers carrying heavy caseloads, and then problems start. And if we've managed to recruit staff fully, and there are no agency staff, I'm very pleased with that. That's really good news for the service. But you have mentioned that there are some vacancies that we're carrying. I'd like to know how many vacancies we currently have in children's services, just to gauge the kind of pressures. And a quick supplement to that is, how many, if you are able to answer this, how many caseloads does each social worker carry currently? Because that tells us things about how much pressure there is in the service.
Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Darji. As you're well aware, any large service, like children's services, always has some churn. A lot of our vacancies arise because actually through internal promotion, which is a good thing, we're not losing expertise. We have in children's services, I say we, I've had nothing to do with it, but you know, officers within children's services have actively been growing our own social workers now for more than 5 years. And it is brilliant. We get a lot of student social workers, you know, in their first year of leaving, as they're qualified, they have to have close supervision, and we put in lots of layers of supervision. As for the number of caseloads, it varies across different teams. At the moment, in some teams, it's probably higher than I would like. I look at it regularly at portfolio meetings, at least once a fortnight. Scrutiny panel look every time they meet at the levels of caseloads, and it's something we query. The one thing that we have done is put in practice supervisor roles, which is a relatively new role in the last 2 years perhaps, that looks in detail at people with their caseloads and looks at how they can be managed. As for the actual numbers, I can send you the latest data set so you can see it. It's a bit wieldy, but you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Councillor McGrath isn't here to ask his supplementary for the final question. That then brings us to the end of agenda item 11. I will quickly move to agenda item 12, which is item 12, page 67, the minutes of the meeting of Cabinet and Cabinet Committee local issues. They are here for information and to note. I will now suggest that we have a 15, maybe 17-minute break. I like to round it off to about 7:20 when we will return when we will come back to the chamber and return to agenda item 13. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just to ask if we can formally record the apologies of Councillor Brooke. He had hoped to get here. He was in Hull this morning with work and he's literally just got back home now, so he's not going to come in. But if we can just formally record his apologies, please.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Masood Ahmed.
Can we also take apologies for Councillor Paul Moore as well, please?
Yeah, recorded. Thank you for that. We will now continue with the second half of this meeting, and we are on agenda item 13, which is holding the executive to account. So for part A of this item, Council will receive a portfolio update from the Cabinet Member for Education and Communities, Councillor Pinnock. Oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and on minutes of Cabinet will be during Part B. And can I also just ask that if anyone has any questions directly for Councillor Pinnock after she's done her presentation, if you ask those to Councillor Pinnock first, and then we'll move on to Part B formally. Okay, so Councillor Pinnock, can I invite you to present your portfolio update, please?
Thank you and good evening everyone. So I'll be doing a short presentation on libraries today. So the word libraries originates from the Latin word libraria, which means place stored books, and dates back over 5,000 years, first used to organise collections of clay tablets in various shapes and sizes. It probably took some time to actually organise back then. Next slide. Next slide. Oh dear, I feel to start again. Okay, so the Public Library Act 1850 was the first piece of legislation which gave local boroughs the power to establish free libraries, creating free access to information and literature, and was born out of a moral, social and educational concern of its time. The Public Library Act 1964 went further, giving local government a statutory duty to provide a comprehensive and effective library service for all, including the following: encouraging both adults and children to make full use of library services, lend books and other printed material free of charge for those who live, work and study in the area. Today, the library service is governed by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, and the Localism Act 2011, relating to devolving more powers to councils and local communities. Over the last 20 years or so, library trends have transformed from being buildings that store books and lend books to community hubs and social spaces. Today, visitors to libraries can see so much more, and trends are changing and evolving all the time. Staff and volunteers are also evolving alongside, with more and more volunteers taking on important roles in our libraries. Okay, so according to the Versity Index of 2021 of trusted professionals, librarians are ranked the second most trustworthy. While libraries are sadly closing in many areas throughout the country, in Kirklees, we are thinking of innovative ways of remodelling our library service to keep our libraries going. Kirklees has the second largest number of libraries in West Yorkshire. This is one of our main strengths, but also a real challenge for us. We also achieve this by having a broad spread throughout the borough to ensure our libraries are located in various spaces, and think of creative ways where, for example, there aren't physical libraries. How do we then make sure there's a library offer? For example, the role of mobile libraries. We currently have 24 libraries in Kirklees. Some sit in community and charity-owned buildings, some are assets transferred to the community, and others are located in council buildings. We operate a community-supported delivery model with support of friends of groups, with around 400 volunteers supporting council staff. Our libraries have around 130 staff, and we have in the region of 400 volunteers. Next slide. Today, aside from books, libraries are community spaces, well-being centres. They combat loneliness, provide warm spaces, help with fuel poverty. Residents can learn new skills, join learning groups, children can learn to read there, people can enjoy songs and music, have coffee, exercise and pursue personal development, as well as a food bank on some occasions are attached to some libraries. Libraries are the only space that you can walk into and no one's going to ask, what are you doing here? What do you want? Our Kirklees Library was awarded the Library Sanctuary status. What is that? What's the Library Sanctuary status? What does that mean? We were the first library in the Yorkshire and Humber region to receive the prestigious National Award for the first time in 2021. Then we went on to achieve it in 2024. It's an accolade awarded to recognise the work of the library service that welcome and provide a safe space for people fleeing conflict, change in environment, or change of climate, and persecution. To remove barriers and encourage inclusivity, Kirklees Libraries was one of the first libraries to remove fines for overdue items and not require ID to join the library. We produce material in different languages to make the service more accessible for everyone, including the migrant community. Next slide, please. Whilst libraries are sadly closing in many areas throughout the country, in Kirklees, we have to think of innovative ways of remodelling our library to keep our libraries going. And as said earlier, we are the second largest we have the second largest number of libraries in West Yorkshire, so this is one of our main strengths, but it's also a real challenge for us. In 2023, the Council was considering reshaping the library service for the future. A new model was being considered at that time, and this involved giving the green light to exploring a possible transfer of the library service to various communities, and to allow them to manage these libraries in the community. After engaging in an informal consultation, it was felt that it wasn't the right time to do that. There was a lack of capacity as well as resource management and skills. This is what the volunteers felt. The volunteers also had concerns about handling personal and sensitive information, which is understandable. And that's around safety and GDPR, which we know can be very complicated and convoluted. Also dealing effectively and safely with vulnerable residents. We listened very carefully to the feedback that we received from that informal consultation. And I think this is a great time for me to thank all the fantastic volunteers that we have in Kirklees, because we have a fantastic volunteer base here. Volunteers are very passionate and committed, and they have various skills to give back to the community. So thank you so much for your service to Kirklees. We certainly could not deliver on what we do without the help of our volunteers. In the meantime, the Council still want to work with volunteers, and we still want to work with those who are interested in libraries being transferred to communities. But in spite of this setback, our ambition is to keep all 24 libraries. We understand how important libraries are to communities, and we've listened carefully to what local people have told us. And this information has shaped our response accordingly. So I'll give you an example. Batley Library. So recently there was a proposal for Batley Library possibly to move away from the Carnegie building into Batley Town Hall. And we listened carefully to what we were told, and because of the strength of feeling that there was from those who engaged in the consultation, it was decided that the library should remain where it is. There's still a lot of work to do around repairs, around fundraising and remodelling of the library, but it was the right thing to do at the time. As a portfolio holder, I feel confident that a revised model of delivery and staff structure will help us achieve not only the shared ambition of retaining paid staff, but also help us to retain the infrastructure that we need to rebuild for the future. It will also support our ambition to provide place-based support. The principle of our access strategy, meaning that people get the access to the support that they need at the right time, at the right place, alongside our inclusive community framework. Next slide, please. Other changes which have come along due to the feedback after listening to what people have had to say was the introduction of our integrated library service in Huddersfield and Dewsbury. This involved combining the library service with our customer service centre. This service is particularly poignant because it provides a holistic service, allowing customers to use the library, but also access help and support that they need. So help and support around housing, for example, council tax inquiries, debts, and so on. Our ambition is that customers will have customer service centres and integrated libraries at a place-based level, locally close to their home, instead of travelling to the town centres. And so far we have 10 library hubs located in various locations. And these hubs offer an increased digital access to telephone support. They enable support by library staff to access various services within the council. They're place-based across the heart of the community, removing the need for people to travel to Huddersfield and Dewsbury if they don't want to. Next slide, please. Okay then, just to conclude, the next steps, which you can see up there. Those are our next steps and those are our ambition for the library service. I'll let you read that. Okay, and then the next slide. Okay, so I will end on what really matters, and what really matters is the lived experience. And these are testimonials of people who use our libraries and what they had to say, how they fed back on the service that they've provided. Thank you.
Okay, so before we go into part B, does anyone have any questions for Councillor Pinnock on the presentation that she's just made? Councillor Cahoot, please.
Thank you very much for all that presentation and all that information. And it's clear from your presentation that you've highlighted many of the facts that go to the heart. Oh, I need to stand up. I don't know if I can reach the mic then. So thank you very much. You've highlighted all the positives and of the library service and why the community needs the library service. And, you know, a famous person once said that something is only worth what someone is prepared to pay for it. You could have a gold Rolls Royce in the market, and if everyone walks around, kicks the tire and doesn't pay nothing for it, doesn't offer nothing for it, then it's not worth nothing. You could have a small vase that's made out of plastic and someone will say, I pay £1 million for that. So we've highlighted all the positives, right, that libraries, how libraries impact the community in a positive manner. Yet, on the same time, we're talking about how we're relying on volunteers, we're looking at community asset transfers. It's like, yeah, we appreciate that it's important, it's valuable, but we're trying to rely on volunteers. We're looking to pass the responsibility on to somebody else. What we want to know is how much in terms of money are you prepared to pay and fund and support these libraries to actually, you know, put some muscle behind this hustle, you know?
Yeah.
Put your money where the mouth is, because you can't value something and then not invest in it. So that's my question. So what type of investment are you looking to do in these libraries, apart from relying on the volunteers and hoping for an asset transfer? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So it's a really good question. And as I've outlined in the presentation, we have 24 libraries in Kirklees. We want to keep all 24 libraries. But to do that, we have to be realistic about our limitations and about, you know, the budgets that we have. The budgets that we have don't allow for us to have a full service, a full library service, open, you know, 24/7 with paid staff. It's a fantastic pie in the sky ambition, but it's not realistic. So to be able to deliver, let me answer the question, to be able to deliver on that, we have to be realistic and we have to cut our cloth accordingly. And that means that we have to rely on volunteers. And actually, that's not a bad thing, because volunteers are quite happy to volunteer their time. The example that I gave about the community transfer, the 8 possible community transfers, there was there was an expression of interest, and the volunteers were interested in possibly taking it on, but unfortunately they didn't feel that it was the right time for that to happen. So, you know, there are community groups who are interested in asset transfer, and as I've said, it's not a bad thing. Those community groups who are interested in asset transfers, those volunteers that do work in the community, they understand the community. They want to work with the community, they want to work with the local authority. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a positive thing, and I think it's something we should celebrate.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Cahoot, you are allowed a supplementary. Just a reminder to all members, you can ask your question and you will be allowed one supplementary. But however, this isn't going to be a conversation back and forth, back and forth. One question, one supplementary.
Supplementary, so is it fair to say then that you don't actually value 14 libraries as much as your presentation suggested? Your presentation was very passionate about how important they are, how essential the services are, how the community relies upon them, and how we're going to support them in every way possible. But it isn't important enough for you to put the financial backing behind it and save them. What you're saying is, by your message, is that we need to brace ourselves for some closures. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, well, I totally disagree with what you're saying. If that's the way I've come across in the presentation, that was not my intention. It was the opposite. My intention was to demonstrate how fantastic our libraries are and the importance of keeping the libraries going. Also, as well, in association with libraries, the ambition is to ensure that they're not just libraries, but also there's an opportunity to have that integrated service where people are able to access services within the library. So in your area, for example, where you live, you could go to the library, you may have a housing problem, you may have a council tax issue. You don't have to come into the town centre, you don't have to call the council and speak to the, you know, direct inquiry. You can go straight to the library and get the support and help that you need. That's a positive thing. There's nothing negative about that. And actually, it shows how much we value the libraries in Kirklees, because we want that service for everybody. We want to make sure that we're accessible and that people have the information that they need when they need it.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Amanda. I suppose I should out myself as a library geek and also a library volunteer, so I volunteer in my libraries. What? I think she's lost the plot. I thought I had. Number of comments, if I may. Firstly, you talked about the possibility of there being asset transfers. It's a shame my colleague, Councillor Arms, had to leave already, because he doesn't call them asset transfers. He calls them liability transfers, because that's in practice what they really are. We're transferring the liability onto a community group to maintain and provide for that facility. And certainly I would not be supportive of moving many libraries into a community asset liability transfer, because it puts an enormous amount of pressure on that community group. You said it wasn't the right time to move ahead with the original proposals in 2023. As you're well aware, I was very engaged through that process and opposing it every step of the way, and I'm glad to see that as an administration you've U-turned on what you were proposing to do, and you're not now trying to cut back on our libraries for all the valid reasons that you've outlined in terms of positivity. But you need to recognise that you have done an awful lot of damage to the volunteer teams who felt unsupported, they felt undervalued, and they felt pressure was being put on them to take on things that they weren't in a position to or really wishing to take on. And we did lose volunteers on the back of that. So there's a whole piece to rebuild that trust with volunteers and increase the number of volunteers that we get. And I'm not sure whether yet the officers have fully acknowledged the damage they created, because every time I have that discussion, there's a sense of denial. And it would be far better to accept that we got it wrong, we damaged that relationship, we damaged that trust, and now we're going to try and start and reset and rebuild. You talk about the accessing libraries and the integrated hubs. Fully support it. But again, it shows the lack of understanding from some of the officers because most of our libraries are doing it already today. So when I go into my libraries, we have residents that are coming in, they've got a problem with their council tax, they've got a problem, and the library staff are helping them, they're using the phones that they've got, they haven't got these special phones yet, but they're using the phone to ring through to somebody to help them. They'll sit down with them at the computers that we've got in the library and help them navigate, filling in some of those forms and things. So, you know, to say we're going to roll out this service, yes, it would be better if we had more support, but it's there already. And I do think that, you know, the experience I had and the volunteers in my ward had when the library service came out to speak to us was they didn't understand our library. They claimed they'd done all of this desktop research and they knew what was happening, knew how many volunteers were and all this kind of stuff. But they very quickly realised that they didn't have a clue. And I do worry about that disconnect between what's happening in our libraries and what some of the senior officers that have been involved in this process over the last couple of years think is happening in our libraries. And I think we need to listen more and say less. And I'll leave it at that. That's
Yeah,
right.
okay, thank you. You've given me quite a lot of fat to chew over. Okay, so dealing with the last point that you made, which I think is linked to the first point about volunteers, my understanding of the situation was that there was an expression of interest that community organisations, community groups may be interested in taking on. Well, that's my understanding. But I think what came to light after the consultation happened was that volunteers didn't understand the level of commitment that was expected.
So I have two libraries, neither have made any suggestions.
I don't know whether it's the two libraries you're referring to, but my understanding was there were 8 libraries that went through this process.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor, you will get a supplementary. As I said, it's not a
There were 8 libraries
conversation,
that went through
guys.
this process, and the whole purpose of the consultation, the discussion, although it was informal, was to obviously have a discussion, understand what the volunteers wanted, how they saw the library service working for them, but also to understand the level of commitment. And as a consequence of those informal discussions, it came to light that it was a lot more than they expected it to be, which is why I mentioned GDPR, you know, dealing with vulnerable residents who use the library, so on and so forth. And the council did listen. And if volunteers have left or felt bruised in any way, then I apologise on behalf of the council. That was not the intention. The intention was to work with volunteers and to empower them, if that's what they wanted, to be involved in the library process. You mentioned about the libraries that you're familiar with, where, you know, the integrated service seems to be working already. As I said in the presentation, there's 10 community hub libraries who are doing this sort of work. And again, I don't know if the two that you're referring to fall within this. But in reality, what we're looking for when we're talking about an integrated library service that's rolled out throughout the borough, where everybody can benefit from it, the idea is hopefully they should all mirror each other, so it shouldn't matter whether you go to one in, you know, I don't know, Ravensthorpe or Kirkburton, it should be the same sort of service. But it's also about the level of service. If you go there, you need some advice and support, you're going to get it. So it may not be, you know, a telephone, because, you know, there may be issues in terms of accessibility with just having a phone, but that people are able to get the support and the advice that they need. Very similar to what happens in the town centres, although that's on a bigger scale. So as I've said, it's happening in 10 libraries so far. We have 24. So obviously there's 14 where these things are not happening at the moment, but the ambition is we will roll it out to all libraries. So all libraries will get that facelift and be in a position to support residents who need that help and support.
Thank you, Councillor Pinner. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary? I want to also highlight we have just about 6 or 7 minutes left for this part before we move on to holding the full executive account. I'm conscious that we've got about 6.
I'll try and be very quick.
Yeah.
So just come back on some of those points. The integrated libraries, one of the 2 libraries in my ward is anticipated to be one of those. My point is, all of the libraries are already doing what they're talking about rolling out, and the officers seem to be suggesting that this was something new. Yes, it'll have better kit, but they're already doing it today. On the 8 libraries, the impression given to those 8 libraries was the council was cutting them adrift. They were not going to provide any funding. They weren't going to provide any staff. They're expecting the library volunteers to take on raising the funds as well as running the services. It wasn't about GDPR. It was about how the hell are we supposed to find 20 grand a year to keep this library running when you've got a small group of maybe 10 or 15 volunteers. That was what the problem was. And when they came out with glossy booklets that the council had produced. This wasn't an informal consultation. This is what we're planning on doing. Here's the detail. Here, take this glossy booklet, go away with it. So I think there's a revision of history going on here by officers because they're not prepared to accept that they got this totally wrong and they damaged the support that they have in the community on the back of it. I'll leave it at that because there's other people to speak.
I know what you say, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Carl Burke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pinnock, for the presentation. Really positive presentation. Really good to hear your passion about libraries and the future of libraries and the intention to keep all of the libraries that we have. We set up in Lindley in 2014 after there was talks of restructuring libraries. There was talk one time that mobile libraries was the way forward. Then it was that wasn't the way forward after all. So we set up our first volunteer group in 10 years ago, Lindley Library Volunteer Group. And they've been very, very active since. But they've always been keen and eager to state that they didn't want to take on the responsibility of an asset transfer. I think similar to Councillor Taylor, they saw it as a risk and not something that they were prepared to do, but they were prepared to help and support and be a community supported library and support the member of staff that was in the library. When it comes to additional roles and responsibilities of volunteers, I think they do feel under pressure. They don't have the skills, the knowledge, the training perhaps to be able to carry out some of the functions or duties that they feel will be coming their way in supporting residents with complex issues. So they're keen to have a paid member of staff. We understand that days, hours may have to change, but I hope that you will work with us in Lindley with our library. It's the only council building that we have in Lindley. We're very proud of it. We use it all the time for advice surgeries, different events throughout the year. So a very keen, active, supportive library group. And one of the library volunteers, in fact, attended council a couple of meetings ago as well. So happy to speak to you. You don't have to comment on these are just comments. So happy to work with you to support our library in Lindley. Thank you.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Ali Arshad, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Absolutely love it. It's a brilliant proposition and concept, and it can't be in better hands. Can I please also make a recommendation within that, in light of what Councillor Darji had explained as a situation earlier on with the customer service point. My own experience where I had to come to Huddersfield to help one of my residents with a blue badge and it's partially sighted, a bus pass application. I had to be really hands-on, and on the back of that I can now possibly make a suggestion. If we can use AI and if we can use technology to perhaps have 2 or 3 phones where just lifting the receiver is enough to take it through to an Urdu speaker, a Gujarati speaker, an English speaker. And by default, if that goes to a call handler at the other end that speaks one of them languages, I may as well explain the situation. Whoever finds it difficult and isn't bilingual will also find difficulty in trying to ask for an Urdu speaking or a Gujarati speaking person at the other end of the phone. That would quite possibly eliminate a lot of problems. If that was in place, I would put it to the test by saying to my then constituent, try going to Dewsbury Library, try making that phone call yourself. If it doesn't work, I'll come with you. But I reckon that would have eliminated, and we integrate it even more, and then it does become an integrated library for a lot of services. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a really good point. I'll take that on board.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pinnock, for the presentation. You're probably aware that both libraries in the Home Valley North Ward have already had the buildings asset transferred to the parish and town councils. However, I just would like to know what your thoughts are on one of the libraries having one day's examiner delivery cancelled, making a saving to the library service of apparently £2.40 a week. So I'd like to know on what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
It's very difficult to comment on that. I don't know the context or the background to it. I'd like to comment, but I don't think it'd be sensible to do so. I think I need to go away and do a bit of research and get you a proper answer. It wouldn't be right for me to pick something off the top of my head. I need to give you the right answer about what's been going on, why it's happened, and how we can get things going again.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of Part A nicely. Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Can I just suggest if any members had their buttons pressed to ask Councillor Pinnock a question on Part A, can you please switch your mics off? But if you hadn't pressed for Part B of item 13, please keep your mics on, as we will now be moving on to oral questions and
Madam Mayor,
comments.
can I just say that anyone who's got their light on, by all means, come and find me at the end. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pinnock. So we will now move on to Part B, which is oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and on Cabinet minutes. So, Councillor Charles Greaves, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is to Councillor Pinnock, and it's in respect of libraries. You can sit down, you're fine. As Councillor Bellamy correctly said, the Honley Library and the Meltham Library were asset transferred some time ago. They both are financially supported by the local communities and by their parish councils, and we've got very active volunteer groups in both. I'm happy to hear that Kirklees is committed to retaining all its libraries, but it feels that this means a very different thing to different people. There was a real fear of threats of closure around the most recent library review. And whilst officers might have felt it was a discussion, I can tell you a lot of volunteers felt it was anything but a discussion, and that it was just another attempt at closure and palming off. Now, there's a real danger in the approach that was taken, in that it's without the volunteers that we've currently got, without their trust, involvement and commitment, without their fundraising and the activities they do and the support they offer, those libraries would probably close. The approach taken did nothing to build trust with the volunteers. It had the exact opposite effect. But there's a bigger issue at play as well, which is when the council says, let's work in partnership, that needs to be a cooperative approach. And too often, it isn't. We're supposed to be a cooperative council, but I think, again, that means different things to different people. The risk was not just to libraries, but the risk is that Kirklees invites communities to become involved in services and then runs away and abandons those services because communities have stepped forward. Each time that's been attempted with libraries, there's been a strong pushback. But the impact of that approach, it doesn't just impact upon libraries and the volunteers in the libraries. It's going to impact upon every other resident, volunteer and community group looking to work with the council. If the community takes one step forward and instead of taking a step forward from the council, it goes the other way, you're going to destroy any trust that there is. And there's a lot of community work that needs to be co-produced. So, I think from the discussions I had with senior officers, perhaps they did start to listen to the ideas and suggestions from volunteers. They did start to listen to some of the difficulties that some of the existing volunteer-supported libraries were having, and some of the opportunities that were available to those libraries where there were very little community support, but where there's the most potential. The libraries in my area are unlikely to secure external funding, but there are other libraries within Kirklees that probably could, but they aren't because they don't need to, because Kirklees is paying for it all. Whereas in my community, we get to pay towards Kirklees and the services everybody else gets. We get to pay towards retaining our own services, and then we were faced with the prospect of Kirklees walking away completely and leaving us to run his own library. I've got a strong interest in Honley Library because it was my great uncle that helped get the library created when he was clerk to Honley. I have to say, back in the 1930s, Honley Urban District Council did a pretty damn good job of running itself. And perhaps ever since then it's been downhill. There was one big opportunity that there is within the library services is to look to recruit volunteers all across the borough. Now, if I remember correctly, the previous cabinet member, who's now an MP, made a comment to the effect that there's some communities that just aren't able to volunteer and support their local libraries. And I don't believe that's true. When you look at the catchment for most libraries, it's tens of thousands of people. There's plenty of opportunity. What there isn't is a drive to do it, and there needs to be. That request for support from communities needs to be across the borough, but they need to know that this council is going to stand behind its words and to support them as and when they step forward. And reluctantly, I would say the evidence just isn't there yet, and I'd like to know what you're going to do to address it. Is that right?
Time. Okay, so I did respond to Councillor Taylor's comments about volunteers and how volunteers felt during the process, and as I've said, if they felt that pressure was being applied and that things were difficult for them, that certainly was not the intention. If they did feel that way, I apologise on behalf of the council. The problem with asset transfer, and this is my understanding, is in the spirit of asset transfer, once it's transferred, the organisation obviously become responsible for the funding and running of that organisation, of that business. But I totally agree with you. You know, we rely heavily on volunteers. Without those volunteers, we wouldn't have the breadth of libraries that we have now. So it's important and it's incumbent on the council to support community groups, to support volunteers going forward. I fully agree with that. What I can't do is commit today and say to what extent that's likely to be. But it is something that I've taken on board, which has been discussed today in this chamber. It's at the forefront of my mind now, and that is something I will go away and certainly discuss with officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Greaves, do you have a supplementary?
You said heavily reliant. What I would say certainly for my libraries is totally dependent upon the goodwill of those volunteers. Without that goodwill, not just today, but for decades to come, there'll be no library. In other areas, it doesn't seem to have been an issue, but across the whole service, the support of volunteers needs to be properly factored in. And as I say, for my libraries, we are dependent upon the volunteers, we're dependent upon recruiting new volunteers, and it looks like we always are going to be. And it's really important that officers and decision makers understand that all libraries are different. There needs to be a partnership that works for everybody. But the approaches that are taken need to be thought through before it started. And I'm absolutely certain that Councillor Taylor and Councillor Bellamy and Councillor McGrath would agree with me. If officers want to talk to ward councillors first about how to maybe shape that approach, we'll gladly help. The damage was done on day one. At the end of the process, quite a bit of it was recovered. But we needn't have gone down the approach that was taken that caused a lot of concern. We simply didn't need to do that. And in the future, I think it'd be best if the council does everything it can to avoid to avoid those misunderstandings that would have been were apparent to me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Andrew Cooper, please.
So we've got a bit of a crisis in Huddersfield Town Centre. We've There's a lot of great businesses in Huddersfield Town Centre. A lot of them I'm more than happy to support and spend time there. But over the last few weeks, we've had, I think, a real crisis. We've lost Beaverbrooks after 90 years. We've lost Next in Kingsgate. Kentucky Fried Chicken, not a fan myself, but they're going. Brewdog, next to Huddersfield University, right bang next to Huddersfield University, they're going. The Slug and Lettuce, Foot Asylum, they've gone. And just outside the Ring Road, Magic Rock has gone. And Councillor Turner, at yesterday's Cabinet meeting, described that as natural churn. I actually think, Councillor Turner, this is something that we should be concerned about, that we should be spending time on, and that as a council, whose role, part of our role, is economic development and trying to do our best for the town centre, which we are doing through things like the Cultural at Heart, but we've got to look at the here and now. What is it we're doing about the here and now to address those issues and support and grow Huddersfield Town Centre?
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for your question. As I said, yes, some of this is natural churn, some of this is totally beyond our control. Beaverbrooks are closing massive amount of operations across the country. I explained yesterday, W.H. Smith looking to cut theirs down to 250 from 500 plus. Brewdog, I don't know whether you're aware, but Brewdog's parent company made a significant loss last year, so it was obviously retrenching across the country and across the world because it's a multinational organisation. An organisation I do well because I actually have shares in Brewdog. I have shares in Brewdog. Shares. When did socialism say you couldn't get cheap beer? Where does it say in socialism you're not entitled to cheap beer? The Slug and Lettuce is about to be reopened under a different brand name. We had, before Christmas, we had a specialist food shop open in the arcade. We had a new cart shop open on 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's a new restaurant opening called Mexicali, I believe. So there is always going to be churn in town centres. Some close, some go, and we have a town centre manager. I'm a member of the bid, I'm on the bid board, so we work with business all the time. The Oakland cart shop has a new rent. Somebody's going to rent that, and I know who it is that's signed up for that. So there is always a certain amount of churn in town centres. We constantly work with businesses. Don't forget, some of these businesses don't want to necessarily work with us because they're part of multinational chains or big companies and they don't want to talk to us, so it's very difficult. But actually, as I said yesterday, the national average, our occupancy rate on our retail offer is slightly above the national average. Not by a lot, but it's slightly above the national average. So this is a problem everybody's facing. As I said yesterday again, 31% of all retail is now done online. 31% of all retail is now online. Think about that. That means up and down the country, there are far too many retail outlets. It's a national problem that somehow we need to address, but at this moment in time, we will continue to work with our town centre shops through our town centre managers and the bid.
Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary?
And I was bought a share in Brewdog for me, so I don't know whether that makes me a capitalist or not, but that was a birthday present. When people talk about Huddersfield Town Centre and the concern about it, and a lot of people's concern about it is genuine, there's a lot of love for Huddersfield Town Centre, for its architecture, for a lot of the businesses that are there, but the concern is genuine as well. And they look to other towns and they compare Huddersfield with those towns, like Halifax, like Barnsley, and they look at those towns and they say, Huddersfield's not doing what those towns are doing. And one of the things that is great about a lot of those towns is that they've embraced local, independently owned and managed businesses. Those are the things which give distinctive character to those towns. So what's the correct response that we should have rather than shrugging our shoulders and regarding this as natural churn? So I think we should be actively promoting businesses in the town centre. And I think it desperately needs a marketing strategy. And I think we need to be doing things there. And I think sitting down with people like some of the prime businesses that operate in our town centre, some of those who've invested a lot in there and they're concerned themselves, and sitting down with them, sitting down with Huddersfield Bid and saying what is it we should be doing and how can we address the current issues that are there. We should be looking at management of public space in the town centre. You see, I mean, if you go around the town centre, you'll see areas with rubbish that accumulates quite regularly. You will see areas where the vegetation has just got out of control. And you feel, who's caring for this space? Who's looking after it? And what council budgets have been cut, which have meant that we're not managing these spaces as well as we could be doing. But yes, we need to be looking at the strategy that we have to be prioritising locally owned and locally managed businesses. Those are the things which people will go into a town centre for, which they can't necessarily find through internet shopping. Those are the things that people will actually get on a train, get on a bus, go out and do something for. I think we've got to think about our town centre as being a family-friendly space, a place where people can go, where they'll feel comfortable going with their children. Places with play areas and family places where they might want to have a picnic or something like that. That's something that Huddersfield Town Centre simply doesn't offer. And public art. Public art makes a real difference to town centres. Murals, sculptures, things that people see in those public spaces. Those are the things which people go, this is a distinctive place. This is a place that's interesting. This is a place that I want to spend time and want to go to. And working with organisations which are doing great work, which are nothing to do with the council, and actually seeing what we can do to help them and turbocharge what they're doing. Looking at organisations like Indie Hoods that promote events in and around the town centre on a weekly basis, and doing that in a consistent and really informative manner. So we need a strategy, we need a task force, we need people to come together to do something about this, and simply shrugging your shoulders and simply describing this as natural churn is the council evading its responsibilities. So we need to not do that. We need to actually get together, have a strategy, and try and improve things within our town centre.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Turner.
Perhaps you misheard me before. We have a town centre manager. We have a bid. I sit on the board of the bid. There's a bid board meeting actually tomorrow, which I'll be at. At that bid board meeting, there will be our town centre manager, our town centre development team. So we're actually heavily involved in the bid. I think you're talking the town down. When I say it's natural churn, I'm trying to talk the town up. Hang on, let me finish.
Sorry, this isn't a conversation, Councillor.
Let me finish. You're saying this negative attitude about shops are closing down. The one thing that drives people out of town centre, people keep saying it's rubbish. It's not rubbish. It's as good as any, better than most. And it will continue to thrive while we talk it up, not constantly saying it's not good because this is closed down, that's closed down. What about the positives? As I said, the businesses that are opening, the businesses that are planning to open that you probably don't know about, the massive investment in Kingsgate, which brings a huge amount of people into Huddersfield. We should be proud of our town centre. We should celebrate it, not constantly say, oh, it's not very good because this is closed down. You talk about Halifax. I compared crime rates last year with Halifax. Halifax town centre crime rate is a third more than ours. A third more than ours. And that was in response to someone who contacted me. So I did the research. Oh, it's funny, is it? The facts, Andrew. You're not allowed to come back, but facts. Halifax town centre is more dangerous than Huddersfield. Barnsley, what did they do? They built a new market. What are we doing? We're going to revamp as market. So we're doing all these things. We talk to our business constantly. We want them to thrive. And we're doing that through our strategy of talking to them, working with them. Of course we want more shops. It'd be great, but as I said, the economy is not great, as we well know, and we can only attract businesses when there's a market for those businesses. But we work with everybody. I'd encourage anybody to come look at Huddersfield, come and invest in Huddersfield, open a shop and sell your products.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is in relation to libraries. I agree with the comments made earlier by Councillor Taylor and Councillor Greaves on the library presentation itself. I think Councillor Pinnock mentioned in your presentation earlier that volunteers didn't really understand the level of commitment they would have had to put into actually running the library. My question would be, whose responsibility was it to communicate this clearly, and does that identify a training need for council staff?
Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you. It is a good question. Difficult for me to answer. I wasn't there, and I certainly wasn't a cabinet member at the time. My understanding of asset transfer or community transfer is often people, organisations don't necessarily understand the level of commitment, what it will involve, where the funding is going to come from. And my understanding was it was an informal conversation that took place. I think they've called it an informal consultation. And it was at that stage that it came to light that the volunteers realised that there was a lot more involved than they expected. That's my understanding. And that's why I gave the synopsis of, GDPR and other areas that they didn't feel comfortable dealing with. And that's what came out of the consultation. So based on that response, I can only think that maybe beforehand they weren't quite sure of what was involved. When they became more aware of what was involved and the level that was expected of them to run a successful library, they decided it wasn't for them. So that's my understanding of the process.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Hussain, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. So would you agree that obviously the officers did what they could, but at the same time there was a responsibility there to kind of share that information, and also, like I said, is there a training need identified, because we could be in similar situations? And you also mentioned about cutting the cloth accordingly. How much cloth do we have to play with?
As I said, it's difficult for me to answer that question. All I can do really is, surmise from information that I've been given about what happened at the time. I certainly wasn't around at the time. I wasn't involved in the process. But the feedback really speaks for itself. It was difficult for the volunteers to feel confident about taking it on. And there may be something around training. There may be something around officers and the way officers deal with things. But as I've said, I don't know, so it's difficult for me to commit to saying that. But it's certainly something I'm willing to look at and look into.
Thank
because
you.
We don't to happen again. I think what seems to echo around in this chamber at the moment is that, councillors have said, how important volunteers are, and that where would we be without the volunteers? And what we don't want to do is create a situation where volunteers don't want to volunteer anymore. We need them. The council need them. I made that clear in the presentation. So it's even more important that people feel comfortable and confident in what the council are proposing or what the level of commitment is for volunteers.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Andrew Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question which refers directly to the meeting Cabinet on the 10th of December. Paragraph 73 is on page 73 in relation to Cleckheaton Town Hall. Now, what's not recorded there is a question that was asked by Councillor Moore, and in relation to this. And it was to do with a building in Dewsbury, which I understand was in Crownest Park. And he said that the group that he was working with, the council had refused to asset transfer something because it was going to cost £3 million. Now, the report that went to the Cabinet on that day in relation to Cleckheaton Town Hall said, and the recommended option was that the Town Hall will be offered to a community group And this community group would have to find £7 million in order to bring the building up to proper standard. Somehow or other, there's a bit of a mismatch here. I wonder if either Councillor Patterson or Councillor Turner would care to comment, please.
Councillor Turner, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. You're referring to Dewsbury Mansion, and there was a move to try and save Dewsbury Mansion when we closed it down because there was a ceiling collapse in one of the rooms, which is, and again, it's a listed building, so it was a listed ceiling. We had a very small museum in there when we were looking at to redesign the museum service. We closed it. We took the museum out of there. It wasn't very big, but we took the museum out there, and that meant the building was surplus to requirements. We worked with a group that formed themselves to try and find a solution for the problem. It is, as I said, it is a listed building. It needs substantial work going on there. We had many meetings. We had site visits with them. We did all sorts of things, but unfortunately, the group couldn't get itself into a position where it could form a cohesive group to start putting a business plan together, and then one or two people had family commitments and other issues that cropped up in their lives, so they hadn't got the time, because it would have taken an enormous amount of time, an enormous effort to develop that, and we offered them every support all the way through, but unfortunately it wasn't viable for the group to form into a constituted group to be able to take that on, which is a shame because it would have been a fantastic opportunity. And in the meantime, we invested money in things like the cafe at the time, which was a tricky decision, and we took it in the hope that that might work. We weren't convinced by it, but we took a risk, and that didn't quite work, and that was after listening to ward members. So we did everything we could to save Dewsbury Mansion, but unfortunately it wasn't to be.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Pinnock, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, because the other part of my question wasn't answered. And I'd still like the Cabinet's opinion as to whether it's appropriate to expect a community group to be able to raise £7 million. I'm not talking about how long they might get to do that, but £7 million is actually quite a lot of money, when in some other cases that I have heard about, the council who have asset transferred a building have kept the responsibility for the capital investment part in the building themselves, and the community group just deals with the running of the building. I just think that expecting a community group to be able to raise that level of money, this is my opinion, I don't know whether it's shared by the Cabinet, I'd just like the opinion as to whether this is feasible.
Councillor Turner.
Sorry, Councillor Pinnock, I should have picked that up. I've said all the way through this process, and you've been in meetings where I've been there, and with yourself in private meetings, this is not without its challenges. This is a challenge, absolutely. But don't forget that 7 million is spread over a number of years. So it may be possible. I hope it is possible that the community in Clockheaton can pull together and can pull this off. And as I said, we had a meeting not long since. We've got more meetings coming up. We will offer every support to that community and say the 7 million is not tomorrow, it's over a period of time. And it may well be that over a period of time you can do that. There are organisations and groups where you can apply that we have no access to, where that money may be available to. As I said, I appreciate it's a big ask, but we will, as we have committed, and commit again today, to work with the community to try and achieve a positive outcome for Clockheaton Town Hall.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'm going... Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I propose, please, that we suspend Standing Order 13, paragraph 5, so that we can complete the questions to the Cabinet members, please? Extend the time.
Is that seconded? Okay. Should we take that to the vote? Can we all vote using our consoles, please? Sorry, we're going to scrap that and we're going to start again because we just need clarity. How long for?
I would suggest, Madam Mayor, until those that have still got the green buttons on have been held.
Or 9 o'clock.
Or 9 o'clock, because there are still quite a few members.
Or 9 o'clock.
So the proposal is that we extend item 13 to go until 9. Yeah, so all those in favour, please, or against, or if you want to abstain, please vote using your consoles. Okay, the votes are in. That is carried. So we will continue with agenda item 13 until 9 o'clock. Councillor Mark Thompson, please.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. And I promise to be more succinct than the Greaves and Cooper show. My question is to Councillor Crook, reference to the statement made by the Housing Ombudsman last week, which the statement when the government announced it will bring AWAB's law into force for damp and mould in the social housing sector from October this year. My question is, what is it that we've done so far? What are we going to complete by October, and what will we be doing post-October? Thank you.
Councillor Crook, please.
Thanks very much for your question, Councillor Thompson. I mean, there's been various reports as we've gone through this process since the regulatory notice in March last year. We've done a fundamental redesign of the damp, mould and condensation response, moved it out of reactive repairs so that we can concentrate and focus resource on that. Part of the redesign has been around ensuring that we survey at an early stage and then follow up with 3 and 6 month checkups to ensure that the repairs that we've done have been effective. There's a dual approach. The first step is that we do a treatment of any mould that's in the house to make sure there's no danger to tenants, and then follow that up with any more structural or fundamental repairs that are required in that home to make sure that the damp and mould, or the cause of the damp and mould, is resolved. We also then look at the data over time to identify archetypes that might have similar problems, and then add them to our list of repairs that need to be done to make sure that we're not getting unheard issues of damp and mould in other houses where it's not been reported. I mean, all of this part of a £380 million investment in our housing stock over the next 5 years to make sure that standards are brought up and that the safety of tenants is made paramount. I absolutely support the government's move to bring AWAB's law into effect, and we are working closely with the regulator to ensure that the progress we're making against the problems that we absolutely recognise we do have in our housing stock is timely and effective and will lead to the right outcomes. So thank you for the question. I hope that answers your concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Crook. Councillor Thompson, do you have a supplementary?
Please, Lady Mayor. One of the local residents that we have who lives in social housing at the moment, one of the recommendations that they had with damp and mould was to open the window. I would assume that that will be on the list post-October. Thank you.
I mean, opening a window doesn't sound like a very effective method of controlling damp and mould in a house. There are lots of different causes of damp, mould and condensation in houses. Some of the homes that we have are of an older design, which has poor design features, particularly around things like windows, poor insulation, abutments where you have cold bridging. That can cause instances of damp, mould and condensation, and part of a solution to that in some instances can be to control the heat and ventilation within the property effectively. That's not the responsibility of the tenant in that case. It's our responsibility as a landlord to ensure safety of tenants and to ensure that the homes that we're putting tenants into are safe to be safe and safe and secure and decent habitable spaces. So I don't recognise that as being an effective part of our strategy to combat damp mould and condensation. It's certainly not advice I would give directly to a tenant in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor David Hall, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to touch on an answer that had been given by, it was either Leader of the Council or Councillor Turner earlier on in the meeting about national insurance. We're told now that because of the government's increase in national insurance, which is going to affect employers, that we are facing a £2.2 million shortfall this year, which is the difference between what our extra spend will be on employees and the grant that the government are giving to partly cover it. We know that there will also be a similar shortfall at the police and the fire this year, which means that ratepayers will be paying through the precept and through the council tax for this extra burden that's been put on local authorities. Given that the Leader of the Council campaigned for a Labour government and got one, what will she now say to the ratepayers of Kirklees who are facing higher bills because of Labour's national insurance hike?
Councillor Pattison.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. You probably expect me to respond by saying that after 14 years of Tory mismanagement, what else could you expect than the £22 million hole that there was in government finances? So I won't bother to say that. No. But what I can say, and I will say, I am really pleased that I campaigned for a Labour government, and I do think a Labour government is local government's friend. They've said that many a time before and since the election, and I think that's proving true. They are, as much as the one way, I think as Councillor Turner said yesterday, the one way they said that they would they wouldn't raise taxes on the working person. And though they haven't raised taxes on the working person, they've had to find that money, that 22, or some of that 22 million, by raising national insurance instead, which is not VAT, it's not income tax, etc., etc. And whilst there may be a shortfall of 2.2 million in our particular budget, they have given us an awful lot more. That gap could have been an awful lot bigger, and they have given us money to pay for adult social care, for children, for homelessness, for potholes, for housing. And that's just the beginning of it. I mean, come the spring statement due in June, we will, I'm sure, see a rebalancing of our budgets to help us to close that gap and do a lot more. I think the future looks very rosy and positive, and I don't think it's fair to say that our residents are paying for it. Our residents, you could say, are paying for 14 years of Tory mismanagement because council tax, the percentage that our residents pay in council tax has gone up year on year on year because the government grant to us did not increase to the extent that it needed to. In fact, it was taken away from us. So it's a lot higher now, that percentage that our residents do pay in council tax. But it's thanks to 14 years of that Tory policy in terms of trying to get rid of the local state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you to the Leader of the Council for that slightly disingenuous answer. I have to say, the local government's friend. Most of these grants were in the pipeline anyway from the previous government. Just to say we've had loads and loads more is not true. We haven't had loads and loads more. And to say that residents won't be paying is false as well, because we're paying for £2.2 million more than we would have been, and that has to come from somewhere. 2.2 million would go a long way to do things like you know, at a time when we're having to hike parking charges, at a time when we've already heard at this meeting about the pressures on highways and bins and everything, what could we have spent that £2.2 million on that the government has now removed from us? And where does the black hole that you're talking about come from? This £2.2 million for this council, the only way it's filled is from the residents paying extra council tax. So it's not right to say residents won't pay for it. I have to say, Madam Mayor, when the Leader of the Council says that this government is local government's friend, well, with friends like that, Madam Mayor, who needs enemies? That's all I would say.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Imran Safdar, please. Sorry, Councillor Patterson. Sorry.
All I would say would be that that hole would have been an awful lot bigger. We were unfortunately looking, I mean, and that money, of course, is going to have to come out of our reserves. We would have been looking at taking a much bigger percentage out of or sum out of our reserves had the friendly Labour government not given us the additional grants and new grants as well to meet some of that shortfall. It would have been a much bigger chunk out of our reserves if they hadn't have done that. And of course there are some authorities in the country which are complaining now because some of that money has been taken from their pockets and paid into ours instead, because we have suffered disproportionately over the last 14 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Safdar, please.
I hope the leader of the council and the relevant cabinet member here can put themselves in the shoes of millions of Yorkshire residents who cannot afford to drive and are relying on public transportation to get to work, school and other important destinations. New figures reveal that the overwhelming majority, 91% of people in the UK, are still grappling with money struggles as a result of this painful cost of living crisis. This is equal to 63.1 million people across this country making difficult choices regarding heating, eating, transport and other essential costs. This is according to independent research commissioned by the TUC. Now, I'm talking about the increase in bus fares as well as rail fares. These increases in fares, which are going to kick in on the 1st of April 2025, they send the wrong signal. It's going to have a huge impact on lower income earners, people on benefits, and carers, disabled people as well. Delaying the uplift to April and keeping it at £2.50 is some comfort, but we're worried on behalf of our residents about the increasing costs around the corner. Rail fares went even more steeply in January. Now, most of you are quite fortunate. We drive. We have lifts, we have cars. Sometimes we belong to 2-3 car households. But these rising costs, which I'm sure the leader and the cabinet members are very concerned about, these rising costs are impacting thousands of residents across the majority of wards in Kirklees. If this council, and indeed their colleagues in government, are serious about ending the need for emergency food parcels, residents making difficult financial choices, going without meals sometimes to spend that money to get to work, and if they're concerned about tackling child poverty and helping local employees to get to work, will the leader of this council and the relevant cabinet member sit with myself and other concerned community leaders and activists to campaign for a reversal of this potentially harmful transportation policy?
Councillor Pinnock. Is it Councillor Crook? Councillor Crook.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Safdar. It wasn't 100% clear whether you were referencing principally transport issues or asking the Leader of the Council to answer this question. I absolutely share your concern that many of our residents here in Kirklees and across the country can't afford to travel in the way that they should and I would like to see them be able to. 25% of households in Kirklees don't have a car at all, so we are in a situation where alternative transport modes are extremely important for us. Not least as you identified through the cost of living crisis. I mean, we all very much welcomed the Labour Mayor of West Yorkshire introducing the Mayor's fares when it first started at £2 and the rest of the country followed. So we are, leading the charge in that, making sure that transport is affordable. one of the principal problems that we have is about economic inclusion. And if you have 25% of the population without access to a car and you have an unreliable public transport system, you aren't enabling those people to have the economic inclusion that will better their lives. You will see from the draft transport strategy that we've published or gone to consultation on through Cabinet yesterday, that we pay particular attention to economic inclusion and to ensuring that we have a reliable transport network as well as an affordable transport network. You know, to that end, West Yorkshire, as you know, is franchising the bus services because although we won't immediately have considerably more bus routes in operation, if we can improve the reliability on those routes, which I'm very confident we will be able to do, then people can rely on those services to get them to places of work and be part of the, you know, the mission of this government to give sustained economic growth through better inclusion of all of our population. So I absolutely share your concerns, and we are doing meaningful things to improve the situation for those elements of our population who, as you rightly point out, have been impacted by the cost of transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Safdar, do you have a supplementary? Okay, thank you. Councillor Anthony Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the Cabinet Member responsible, does the Cabinet Member believe it is acceptable for the Council to take no action to address the illegal destruction of green spaces and trees, and for subsequent commencement of major works to begin on such a site without planning permission? Environment. Councillor Turner. Or site at Reaphurst Road, Birkby.
Councillor Turner.
No, of course not.
Councillor Smith. Supplementary.
Thank you for your direct answer, Councillor Turner. So in 2021, over 400 trees were felled illegally at Reaphurst Road in Birkby. We subsequently fought and obtained a Forestry Commission replanting order for over 470 trees. And in the last few weeks, the bulldozers have again moved in to start groundworks for roadworks that the Planning Department have freely acknowledged should have planning permission. Councillor Turner, do you not agree that this lack of action and enforcement sends a message to unscrupulous developers that they can do whatever they like in Kirklees? So when will the Council finally take decisive action to enforce planning regulations and clamp down on dodgy developers?
Councillor Turner.
Excuse me, of course it's unacceptable that if anybody's moving on site without that. One of the problems is, quite often what you find is they pop in when nobody's looking and start doing this work, and then we have to report them and we have to go out with a stop notice. So it may well be that that stop notice is in process. If you send me the details, I will check with enforcement, I will check with head of planning tomorrow if a stop notice has been issued. But once they move on, you can only stop them once you issue a stop notice. And sometimes they go on there and we don't know about it. So by the time we get to know, they've done some damage. But we will issue, if it's without planning permission, I will make sure we issue a stop notice as soon as possible. You're absolutely right. As you described them, dodgy builders, but people who don't abide by the rules, shall we say, should not be here in Kirklees. We don't want you. We want to work with developers that's responsible and will work with us through the planning system. We do not want fly-by-night, dodgy builders, as you call them, here in Kirklees. So please, go to Calderdale.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Hanifa Darwan, please.
Right. My question is to Graham Turner. Anyway, Graham, you might be happy to know that we've got the 10-pin bowling going in Dewsbury. Probably 80% of the business has shut down, and we've got one new business back in town. Now, with all this internet shopping and everything, people buying online, I do agree with you, because people are buying online. So why don't we change the names of our town centre into leisure centre, and perhaps do something about the Dewsbury Sports Centre? What do you think to that?
Councillor Turner.
We've been round and round and round and round until we're dizzy on Dewsbury Sports Centre. It crops up here, it crops up at Dewsbury Town Board, which I'm a member of, We've made it very clear that the budget that we're presenting next month has no money in it for reopening Dewsbury Sports Centre. We don't have the funds to build a new sports centre in Dewsbury at the moment, but who knows in the future. But at this moment in time, it stays closed because we haven't got the capital to fund a reopening programme or build a new one at the moment, but who knows in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Darwin, do you have a supplementary?
No, I'm looking for the future.
Thank you. Councillor Darji.
Thank you very much. Twofold question. First, we've been talking about degenerations and town centre issues. I think nobody's trying to talk down our town centres. I've lived in Batley for 60 years and I'm very proud of Batley. But I think we could promote town centres better, give more incentives to businesses, be more ambitious, maybe learn from Dubai, who manages to get businesses from all over. Why can we not be ambitious? So it's a question of going a bit higher. Thinking outside of the box, I think is, thinking outside of the box is important. But my main question is about Batley Town Centre development proposals. I've been asked by many residents and businesses to raise concerns here today. Batley is going to spend 4.5 million for the redevelopment, and some people are saying the council has wasted 4 years so far in terms of God knows what they've been doing and consultation, etc. Now they're trying to hurry because if we don't quickly spend the money, we're going to lose it. That's what residents are telling me. And secondly, the businesses are saying that the consultation should have been more effective rather than online and occasional. So what they're saying is meetings with proper presentation and discussion would also really help. But people are very concerned that the development, in their view, is not worth 14.5 million, and how is that going to benefit Batley Town Centre? They are very, very concerned about the proposals so far, and many people are saying they don't agree with the proposals. They are not going to help the businesses who are very concerned about some of that, and also the residents. So I'd like some response to that if possible, please.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm not entirely sure we'll ever create Dubai out of Batley, but we'll give it a go. And besides which, I'm not entirely sure about some of Dubai's practices with regards to workers and human rights for women. So I don't really want Dubai in Batley. The LUF funding for Batley. This has been going on for quite some time now. We have had more consultations, more meetings over one issue than anything I've ever done. We've got another meeting next week, I believe, to discuss this. It's been consulted on, it's been talked about, it's been changed again, it's been changed again. We cannot get a consensus because every time we have elections, we get new members elected, which is fine because that's democracy. They want it changing. We've agreed it. We change it again. We still disagree with it. So it's been a real challenge. And you're right. The government may eventually get fed up of it, but that won't be our fault. That'll be the people who constantly change their minds. We've had plans agreed, and then somebody pops up and says, well, I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with that, and 2 or 3 of them want it changing again. So it's a real challenge. The plans we have, we believe were the right plans. We've changed, as I said, we've changed them loads of times, and we still can't get a consensus. So there's going to come a point where we're going to go, this is the plan, or the money goes back, because it's as simple as that. We cannot continue at this rate, because it's just taking far too long. We spent hundreds and hundreds of hours of officer time. As I said, there's another meeting yet again next week. So we are working there, but please, will somebody in Batley agree with each other?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Darji, do you have a supplementary?
You're saying, Councillor, issue is we have to make sure that residents are happy with the redevelopment. It's going to affect businesses, and it's only because of many businesses that Batley is now thriving once again, whereas some years ago it was completely dead, which unfortunately seems to be the case for Dewsbury now. So I think basically we have got to make sure we get it right rather than rushing into something that the residents, businesses are not happy with. It's not going to help matters at all. And I really feel that businesses and people are saying that is the proposal worth £14.5 million, they would say no. they're saying. And also when we apply for government funding, how come that it's so restricted when we could have included Batley Library, for example, the park near there, so actually benefit the whole of the town centre. But this is so restricted, one area, one road, and that's it. Is it worth spending 40 million? And people are saying, no, it's not. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
So the money comes through the what was called the Levelling Up Fund, and that came with very strict rules about what it could be spent on and what area it could be spent on. We're well aware that Battery Library is outside the area, but that's the rules of the game. We were given red line boundaries, and it has to be spent within those red line boundaries. There was no flexibility on that in all of bids across the country. Here's your target, here's your money that you spend it in that area. Those were the rules we have to abide by. When you're saying we need to make sure, slow down and get to the point, I've seen snails move quicker than this project. We've talked about it incessantly, and it's fine saying, let's get agreement. We've tried. We cannot get everybody to agree because there's always some 2 or 3 voices from businesses change their mind or want to do something different. This is a good example of why too much consultation can be a bad thing. Sometimes you just need to get on with things, because if we carry on at this rate until we get a consensus, I'll be an old man. You are. Oh!
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor John Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's for Councillor Hawkins, and it's about council inquiries. I'm a huge fan and advocate of council inquiries. Encourage all other members to use it as much as they can. I call it the Google of Kirklees, because if I don't know the answer, they'll find me the answer. I do have a problem though. So since January 23, so 2 years ago, I started keeping a spreadsheet of all of the issues I'd raised through council inquiries, and would then, sort of remove them when I got responses or the issues were resolved. As of today, I've got 326 open queries with council inquiries. Can you help me get council inquiries to help me get that number down by responding? The problem is, you raise issues, you don't always get the response that confirms that something's happened or something. I'm sure some of these will be closed, should be closed, but I don't know because I haven't been given any feedback. So would you be prepared to pick that issue up? I have spoken to the team about it, and they've come back with, well, we've got resourcing challenges. But these are things that should have been dealt with by services across the council, and may have been or may not have been. But I genuinely don't know. And 326, it's getting more and more difficult for me to manage that number of open items. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, John, for that. Fellow spreadsheet geek myself, so I fully appreciate that. And you said you were waiting for since July. You've been wanting to give me a really tough question and giving me 300 odd pieces of casework. That's a good one, is that, John? I like that. But no, I have a similar. I think many councils will come across this, where some issues, due to the complexity that they come across, span multiple different departments in the council. I can think of one that I've been working on that's involved highways, corporate landlord, a few other different people in the mix as well. So I can understand from the level of complexity that some do take a period of time. However, please do forward as many of them along to me as you wish. I'll do my best to support as best I can as well. Yeah, glutton for punishment, me, John. So do send them along. I'll do my best to make sure you get as many responses to them as you can. I know council inquiries get it from 69 of us, don't they? So I imagine they've got a fair list to get through. So bear with them, be patient, but I'll do my best to support expediting.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, and thank you for the response. I did want a personal assistant. It sounds like I've got one now, doesn't it? I've now got a caseworker working for me. I think it's valid. Some of them are very simple things. Some of them literally, was that pothole dealt with? Was that sign repaired? One of the challenges I have in the ward that I represent is geographically it's very big, so there are lots of roads. And so you get an awful lot of issues around those rural roads, and it's trying to get response. They're not the complex issues. Complex issues, usually, there's a backwards and forwards dialogue and discussion, as you said about one with yourself. These are simple and straightforward. It's just the process is broken, so there's no feedback loop. So yeah, I'll share with you, and perhaps we can together try and see if we can find out what's wrong with the process. That means it's not working well.
Councillor Hawkins.
I would appreciate that. And I know that the piece of work has been done, and I think it might have gone to a number of the groups as well around sort of customer satisfaction and how we as councillors and council inquiries, what sort of inquiries go into council inquiries, how on average they're dealt with. And I think there's always work to do that makes sure whenever the council does do good work, that we do let people know about it as well and get back to it. It's the same with residents when they report a pothole in, do they hear then, or this has been sorted? So there's a whole range of work we need to do on customer satisfaction and communicating, not just with councillors but the public as well. But I think I hope it will have gone to the other groups, the work that is being done on that, to make sure that we do make our processes as streamlined as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Carl Burke, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for that question. It moves nicely on to mine, which was about councillor inquiries as well. Councillor Hawkins, I'll have to amend my question based on some of the information that you provided. Can you tell me how many members are in the councillor inquiries team? How many people are in that team?
Right, the second, Councillor Burke, but I'll make sure to get that information to you as quick as I can.
I do know. So I think the point is there's not enough people in that team. The information I received, I've got hundreds of outstanding pieces of casework. That is the method by which we communicate with our residents. We try to be quick, effective and efficient in being able to deal with issues. I don't want to pass all my casework on to you because you said you're struggling yourself, so it doesn't really fill me with confidence that you'll be able to get mine done if you can't get your own done. But I've been told that council inquiries has increased from 374 inquiries in 2017 to 5,967 in 2024. So that's quite a lot. So I think something needs to be done in order for us to have a service that meets the needs of our communities and our residents so that we can deal with the issues and get back to them. And I've been privy to some of the emails that I've seen from council inquiries when somebody has replied back. And council inquiries are simply forwarded on to an officer, which we can do. I've had officers come back to me and say it needs to go to council inquiries. So they're in the middle of us trying to deal with things in a timely manner. We used to have ward meetings maybe 10 years ago or less where we could have meetings with officers and deal with issues as they came in, and then people were held to account, and we had an action plan and we go through the casework or any outstanding issues in our wards with planning, highways, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a long meeting. People used to come in just for their part and then they would leave. But it was an effective way of dealing with things, and people were held to account and with a clear line of inquiry as to who was looking after each matter and each issue in it. So it'd be really, really good if you could look at this, look at council inquiries and see how it can be made fit for purpose so that it can meet our needs and, most importantly, the needs of our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Councillor Burke, for that response as well. And it cut me some slack. I've just got 326 cases off Councillor Taylor, so I've got quite a big inbox now all of a sudden. I do understand, as I've said myself, the challenges with council inquiries and sort of as casework. It sounds like you have had that presentation that I was talking about earlier as well. But we've got to, as a council, we've got to have coordinated responses. I do feel very sorry to any officer who is suddenly helpful to you, and then all of a sudden every query that you've got relating to that particular issue, you'll go to them first. And I think there does have to be a bit of a sort of stopgap away for us to measure and track the issues we are having in Kirklees, what councils are coming to officers with, and I think council inquiries is that route. I think, as I mentioned earlier on a different topic, more resources always welcome. I'll certainly take that away and see what more we can do within the resource that we do have. But I think they do the best they can under very difficult circumstances. I think we often hear sort of more issues that are increasing, whether they're about fly tipping or potholes, and I think council inquiries deal with, as I say, 69 different councils all coming to them with a variety of different queries, and I think they do need our respect and admiration for that. But thank you for bringing that to my attention, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Bellamy, please. Point of order from Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given that it's coming up to 9 o'clock and we've got 4 motions still on the agenda, could I propose, please, under paragraph 16 of Standing Orders, that once we've concluded this, that all the motions are formally moved, formally seconded and put to the vote, so we can get them off the order paper.
We would need to extend the time for that, Councillor Hall, so you are then... Without debate? Right. But we still need to extend time because we're doing this till 9, so we'll still need to extend the meeting beyond 9 p.m. to be able to go through all 4 motions, regardless of without debate. We will still need to extend the meeting time.
Close this item off now then and just move.
When you've
No,
done a vote to
we've
extend to 9
voted
o'clock.
to extend till 9,
Okay.
haven't we?
Yeah, but we can change our minds.
So we'd need to extend time beyond 9 to go through those motions, regardless of debate or not. Yeah?
Formally move sending to the vote.
Okay. How long are we extending by? 5 minutes, right. So we extending the meeting till 5 past? Yeah? Okay, let's take it to the vote then. We have a mover and a seconder for that proposal. Sorry, that's carried, so we'll be extending the meeting by 5 minutes beyond 9 p.m. just to go through the motions without debate. Okay. Councillor Bellamy, please.
Right, I'll keep this really short. My question is for Councillor Turner. Can you provide an update on the asset transfer of the Robert Ashton Lodge in Meltham to Meltham Town Council?
At this moment in time, no, it wasn't. I had an asset transfer meeting early this week, and it wasn't on that list, so no, I can't at this moment in time.
Supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. Could you possibly get me that update then? Because it's really important to Meltham Scouts, because they're being asked if they will move into the Robert Ashton Lodge and come out of their hut, which currently they rent from Meltham Town Council. Thank you.
Councillor Turner?
Send me the details and I'll look into it next week.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Smith, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going by that clock. We've got a minute left.
Clock's broken, move on.
I'm the last one. Question to Councillor Kendrick. Given the ongoing challenges in delivering SEND and alternative provision services, how confident are you that Kirklees Council is fully meeting its statutory obligations and the needs of children and young people in these areas? Specifically, what measures are in place to ensure timely responses to mediation outcomes and court judgments, and how is the Council ensuring accountability and continuous improvement in these processes?
I am confident.
Okay. Thank you. No time for a supplementary, I'm afraid. It's 9. No, it's 9. It's 9 p.m. So I'm going to move on. Sorry. Item 16. Motion submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14 as to bus fares. Councillor Safdar, are you still moving that? Okay. It's without comments. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Councillor Arshad. Sorry, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say, just as the start of the motions, that the Lib Dem group we'd like to withdraw our motion at agenda item 18, because we'd like ours to be fully debated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Okay, so item 16, motion around the bus fares. So that's been moved by Councillor Safdar and seconded by Councillor Ali Arshad. can we move to the vote, please? Please use your consoles. No idea. They're going to pull theirs? What they're doing? Okay, that falls. Agenda item 17, motion submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14 as to burial sites. We have also received one amendment from the Labour Group on this motion. Councillor Hussain?
Mayor, I'd like to move the motion, item agenda 17 for burial sites, please.
Okay, so Councillor Hussain is moving that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ahmed? Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Pattison to move the amendment?
Madam Mayor, our group will withdraw the amendment in terms of speed, or for them.
Okay, so no amendment, so we'll go straight to the vote for agenda item 7 on burial sites. Yeah, that is carried. Item 18 has been pulled. Item 19, motion submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14 as to political governance in Kirklees. Councillor Pattison, are you moving that?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Pattison.
Yes, I will move that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, is that seconded? Councillor Crook?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go straight to the vote. Twenty-eight, 21, 29, 49.
What am I pressing? Am I pressing 4 or
Have we got 50? That's everybody.
4 or again? 4. I really have gone to sleep.
Right. That is carried, and that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.